guys, and welcome to Amaz's Constructed Compendium for the GORO expansion. There's a lot of cool cards that I can't wait to, rate for you guys. And of course, once you guys finish watching this video, then you, too, will know which cards are really good and are 5-star meta defining, and which cards are, well, perhaps not that good, and you can dust if you want. So let's go ahead and explain our rating system first. We have a rating system of 5 stars. 5 stars would be a card that's meta defining, right? It's really good on its own, and you can build a deck around it. So 5-star cards would be like Patches, would be like J Claws, Draconid Operative, or Kazakis. Next we have 4 stars, which is an awesome card, which you probably usually want to include in your deck if you're playing that specific class, right? There's Blast Crystal Potion at 4, Silver Golem at 4, and Bloodsail Cultist as well. 3-star cards would be, fine cards. They usually, support your super good cards, such as like Mistress of Mixtures, Fellfire Potion, and Jinyu Water Speaker. Next, we have the 2-star cards, which are, more of a flavor or like a flavor of the month kind of thing. So we have Dirty Rat, Volcanic Potion, and Malkarok. And next, we have the 1-star cards, which are the bad cards and like the tech cards, right? So they're seeing really fringe amounts of play, and it's probably not going to work. We have Smuggler's Run, Magic Soulcaster, and Auction Master Beardo. And finally, what separates the 1-star cards from the 0-star cards is that 0-star cards never see any play at all, okay? Never in any competitive deck. So we have Purify. I can hear you, Ben Brode. Fel Orc Soul Fiend, and Grokfu Master. And with that rating scale, we can actually start the review. There is one note for the rating system, is that there may be 5-star cards that never see any play. A good example of this is Wrath of the Chain, right? Wrath of the Chain is a 5-star card because the effect is crazy, but then Priest wasn't really that good, or at least the Reno Priest in Gaetan, right? So it did not really see any play. Doesn't still make it a bad card. So, you kind of have to evaluate the whole. Just playing one 5-star card and 29 0-star cards does not really make sense when you want to make a competitive deck, right? Trump rated Tyrion a 2-star, and I think that is not what this rating system is about. So, there you go. Alright, let's go ahead and start off with the Druid Quest. The Druid Quest is all quests right now are the new mechanic of Hearthstone. Quests actually start in the opening hand of every game, and you can choose to mulligan it away if you want. Alright, so they all cost 1 mana, and when you play it, you and your opponent will both know how it progresses. And as soon as you hit the reward, you actually add that card into your hand. So let's go ahead and see. Jungle Giants is a Druid quest that says summon 5 minions with 5 or more attack, and the reward you get is Barnabas. And Barnabas is a 5 mana 8/8 with Battlecry. Reduce the cost of minions in your deck to 0. So all minions in your deck turns to 0 mana, and then you're really happy. And you get a 5 mana 8/8 as well, of course, right? So this new Druid archetype rewards you by playing a lot of 5 attack plus minions. So you want to play as many as you can, play your Magma Rages, for God's sake, and then you get to use your quest, and then basically overwhelm your opponents that way with this quest, right? Very similar to J Golems, because J Golems are kind of like the same mentality, right? You want to play, small minions to contest the early board, and then late game, you just make a lot of big J Golems, and your opponent can't really deal with it, right? So this is basically the same situation here. And of course, Aviana is going to be rotating out. So this is kind of like the dinosaur version of the Aviana. Now, how good is this card? Well, I actually think this card is only so-so. I think Jade Druid is still going to be better, right? It's going to be a bit more consistent. And with Jungle Giants, you also start with 1 less card in your hand. Well, not 1 less card in your hand, because you start with Barnabas in a sense, right? Every time you start with a quest in your hand, you're kind of starting with the legendary in a sense, right? That you can't play immediately. But I think J Golem is going to be a slightly better. I think this is still a good card. I don't think reducing the mana cost of all your minions by 0 is a bad thing, especially if you fill your deck with a lot of cantrips, a lot of card draws, and stuff like that. So I would rate this quest at 3 stars. Onwards to our actual Druid cards. We have Tutorial Forager. 2 mana 2/2, add a random minion with 5 or more attack to your hand. So it's a 2 mana 2/2 that draws a 5 attack card. Probably going to play with with the new Druid quest, because you need early game, and this also ramps you up to the late game. If you get a bomb from this, it doesn't really matter, because if you're playing that type of Druid deck, then you'll be fine anyways. So this card is alright. I think it's just a 3-star. It's solid. Next we have Elder Longneck, 3 mana 5/1, the new Magma Rager. Battlecry, if you're holding a minion of 5 or more attack, you get to adapt. Now, unfortunately, the adapt for this specific minion is not really too good, right? The best case situation is you get health or divine shield, right? If you get anything else, it's kind of like a little bit of an awkward situation. It's also statted very aggressively, which the Barnabas deck doesn't really want to do. So I think there are better choices at 3, especially with all the ramp as well. You'll be running in druids, so you don't want to play this and you don't want to be playing ramp things. So it's kind of like, like it's not logical to run both. So I wouldn't think this card is too good. I would think this is a 1-star card. Next we have the Averted Longneck. For 5 mana, you get a 5/4, and Battlecry, you get to adapt. So once again, you get to choose between all the 10 choices and just make the best one out of the situation, right? This is actually kind of close to a Druid of the Claw, right? Druid of the Claw would be just the best 5-drop that Druids can have, but Druid of the Claw also doesn't really trigger the Druid quest, right? This actually does trigger the Druid quest. So it's a little bit better if you're playing that, but if you're not playing that, then Druid of the Claw is better. And if you're playing Jade Druid anyways, then this might not even be a thing. So I would just rate this a 3-star. Next we have Earthen Scales, a 1 mana spell that gives a friendly minion +1/+1 and then gain armor equal to its attack. Well, this is a really good card if you're actually playing something like, in a Pirate Warrior meta, or like a Shaman aggro meta, or like it just, maybe Hunters become like the next aggro thing and you just get beat down, right? This effectively is a 1 mana heal yourself a lot. And that is really, really good, right? You can compare it to stuff like Forbidden Healing in the future, in the past. Just any healing spell is really reasonable, and it just costs you 1 mana. Another cool interaction you can do is you can Alexstrasza yourself, and then Earthen Scales on the Alexstrasza, and effectively, possibly gain 23 health in 1 turn. That is the new Reno, right? So this could see some play, but at the end of the day, it is still a flavor card. So you put it in if it's aggressive. If you're playing against a control deck or something like that, this is pretty much a dead card. So 2 stars. Next, we have the Evolving Spores. Adapt your minions for 4 mana. So you have to choose the same move for all of them, and this is really good if you're actually taking more of the effect, right? The deck that can take the most out of this effect would be something like, the Egg Druid, right? The very highly aggressive Druid deck that just swarms the board and goes face, right? There's Mark the Lotus to support this as well, but Living Roots is going to be rotating out, so it's going to be hard to build this type of deck. And this is also 4 mana for a card that could... It's a little overcosted, right? We know that Enhancer Mechano was a 4 mana 3/2 with pretty much the same effect. And this one does not come with a body, and it's even harder to cast on an empty board. So I would give this just a 1-star. Next, we got the Shell Shifter. The baby Druid of the Claw is here. 4 mana 3/3. But it's not really a 4 mana 3/3, let's be honest. It's either a 4 mana 3/5 Taunt, so Sen'jin Shieldmaster, or a 4 mana 5/3 Stealth, which is like a bigger Jungle Panther or something like that. This is actually really good in the Druid quest, because usually you want to pick the 5/3 Stealth to trigger the quest, and the versatility actually helps you make a 3/5 Taunt against those pesky Pirate Warrior decks, those aggro Hunter decks or something like that. So the choice of making this not a 5/3, which is probably the default option, and making it a 3/5 against more aggro decks helps this card quite a bit, right? So I think this card is pretty decent, and you would actually want to consider this in your Barnabas decks. So I would give this a 3-star. Next card we have Living Mana. 5 mana card. Transform your mana crystals into 2/2 minions and recover the mana when they die. So to rephrase this, fill your board with 2/2s, lose 1 mana crystal for each one you summon, and then when they also have Death Rattle, add a mana crystal back to your mana pool, right? So once again, this is a very highly aggressive card in my opinion, in that you can only make use of this in like something to do with like Savage Roar, or something to do with, you know, living mana and then do evolving spores, you know, something like that would be nice. AoEs are actually in every single person's deck, and if they don't have AoE, they're probably beating your face, right? Because Smork Warrior does not run AoE. So yeah, you have to abuse this somehow. And I honestly, let's be honest, this is going to be really hard to work well. The best case in this situation is really good, but this is very, very all in. So I think this is just a 1-star card. Giant Anaconda for 7 mana 5/3. 7 mana 5/3 seems pretty bad, right? But it does have an effect. It has Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your hand with 5 or more attack. So this effectively triggers the quest 2 times if it actually works. And also it could actually cheat the curve, right? So you play Giant Anaconda, your opponent kills it, and then boom, Yasharaj or something like that. That's something crazy or whatever, right? So that's very similar to Void Caller in the past, where Void Caller can do some pretty stupid stuff where your opponent can't really kill it, right? The only problem with this card is that it's 7 mana, right? Void Caller was a 4 mana card, and it's much more reliable to cast. At 7 mana, you really need to be doing something good. The good part, at least, though, is that you're playing a class that's Innervate. So if you Innervate a Giant Anaconda, then you're effectively, you know, playing a Void Caller in that sense, right? So there's a little bit of a saving grace there, at least. But honestly, this is not gonna work too well too often. I mean, the effect is really strong, right? But I think this is gonna be a little awkward, for sure. So I would still say this is a 2-star. I don't think it's that bad, just because of like the ramp and the interface that Druid has. But I think there are better options at 7 at the same time. And finally, we got Tyrantus, a 10 mana 12/12 super beast that has the Fairy Dragon hero power, right? So it can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. So you play this 10 mana 12/12 and you effectively you know, win the game. Unfortunately, it's 10 mana and it's really hard to cast correctly. Obviously, this card is in here so that you can cheat it out somehow. Something you can cheat this out with would be the new Druid quest, right? Make this 0 mana, and then you can play a 0 mana 12/12, and that's pretty good. Unfortunately, the quest only works on minions that are in your deck, and if this is in your hand, it gets a little awkward. Well, at least you can still cast it on 10, right? And you know, in control metas, especially in a meta filled with like a lot of control warlock handlocks and like mages and like priests and stuff like that, then this is fine. But there is the saying that every time you think it's an aggro meta, everything you think is a control meta, it's gonna be an aggro meta. So I don't think this is that good, and there are better choices at 10 to have a more immediate, lasting impact. So I'm just gonna make it a 1-star. Alright, onwards to the Hunter class. Hunter is getting the Marsh Queen as the new quest. For 1 mana, of course it's 1 mana, play 7 1-cost minions. And as soon as you play 7 1-cost minions, you get Queen Carnassa. What does Queen Carnassa do? Well, Queen Carnassa is a 5 mana 8/8. And the battle cry is you shuffle 15 Carnassa's Brood into your deck. What does Carnassa's Brood do? It's a 1 mana 3/2. With Battle Cry, draw a card. Now that is a pretty silly effect, right? A 1 mana 3/2, and you get to draw more 1 mana 3/2 that gets to draw more 1 mana 3/2s, you know? It basically cycles itself, right? And the fact that you are actually triggering this for 7 1-cost minions is actually not that hard. We're gonna get into the new Hunter minion soon, but this is a really good card, like really, really solid. Like 5 mana 8/8, well, effectively 6 mana 8/8 if you count the 1 mana quest card, right? That is not bad. And the effect is insane, right? The effect is actually insane. You're playing a very aggressive minion anyways. Your opponent has to deal with an 8/8 as well. And if they do deal with the 8/8, well, you're gonna just keep on swarming the board every single turn. And not to mention, the 1 mana 3/2 beast actually have a lot of synergy with cards like, you know, Tundra Rhino and, you know, just Hyena. No, you're probably not gonna play Hyena, but still, like the fact that you're swarming the board like this, it's just gonna be game over, right? Like Jade Idols is very similar to this, where you just basically just keep on drawing your cards and keep on just playing the cards, right? So I think this card is insane, and it's gonna be a 5-star in my book. Let's go ahead and look at some Hunter cards. We've got Jeweled Macaw, 1 mana 1/1, Battle Cry. Add a random beast to your hand. Very similar to Web Spinner, but better because it is a battle cry. You get to play the random beast immediately if you want, and you can actually macaw into another 1-drop, And then you get to do the quest 2 times immediately, right? And then if you don't get a very free card, that doesn't matter. You can just cast it later. This is a very easy 5-star. I mean, I can't see how this is not an auto-include in every single hunter deck. You don't even need to be playing the Marsh Queen to play this, right? It's a 1-mana 1/1 that draws a card. That's insane. You just want to play this. Next, we have a Crackling Razor Maul, 2-mana 3/2 with Battlecry, Adapt to Friendly Beast. 2-mana Adapt is really good. I mean, this is already a 2-mana 3/2, right? 2-mana 3/2s are already pretty insane, and it does have an extra effect on top of it. Now, this does require you to have a beast, which is, it's not too difficult, especially if you're playing a lot of, low-cost beasts and stuff like that. And, there are some good effects that you want on 1/1 beasts, such as +3 attack, such as +1/+1, something like Poison would be really good as well. So there are some good choices, and Adapt is pretty consistent in the fact that you get to choose one of those effects. This is still not like it's all right. It does require something else to be played. It's kind of like an Argent Protector, but it is a 3/2, and 2-mana 3/2s in hunters are really good. They hit your opponent for 3, right? So I'll give this a 4 stars. I think it's reasonably enough that you do want to include this in your decks. Alright, onwards to Grievous Bite. Grievous Bite is a 2-mana card that deals 2 damage to a minion and 1 mana to adjacent ones. So you could say that it's a little bit of a bad swipe, or it's a bad Maelstrom Portal or something like that. But this is a very good tech card, right? It's a very good tech card against the Mirror Match, for example. If your opponent is playing exactly the same deck as you are with all these 3/2s and 1/1s and whatnot, well, you get to just kill them off, right? For the cost of 2 mana. Unfortunately, a 2-mana just deal 2 damage is not enough to be played. Like, we see that Lava Shock wasn't played at all. 2-mana deal 2 is just not a good rate. Like, we need better in Hearthstone. Hearthstone has evolved to a point where you need 2-mana deal 3. Otherwise, it doesn't really see play. And the big thing about this card, you cannot hit the face, right? You have to hit minions. So it's strictly a tech card. You do want to do it if the meta is swarmed with, pirates and 1-health creatures and stuff you can kill early on. So it would be a 1-star card. Raptor Hatchling, it's a 1-mana 2/1 with Death Rattle. Summon a 1-mana 4/3 Raptor into your deck. Now, a 1-mana 2/1 is good in Hunter, like it's reasonable, right? That's like a minimum of 3 stars already. How good is a 1-mana 4/3 that you can't play on turn, like the early game, right? I'd argue that is actually not bad, because imagine would you play a 3-mana 4/3 in Hunter that deals 2 damage to your opponent's face? You would, right? So you would play this. You would play a 1-mana 4/3 that you can hero power for free. And that's the worst case situation, right? The best case situation is you can play the 1-mana 4/3 along with everything else. Like, you can just spam your hero power. You can just play different minions and use your Eaglehorn Bow or whatever, right? So this is fine. This is a card you might want to actually include in your 1-drop Hunters. So I would rate this 4 stars. Terror Scale Stalker, it's a 3-mana 3/3 with Battlecry. Trigger a friendly minion's Death Rattle. It was pretty funny when Princess Huhuran was out, because Princess Huhuran, everybody was like, oh my god, this card is so good. 5-mana 6/5 and you get an extra effect on it. Well, turns out that Princess Huhuran was pretty much unplayable, and I do not see that this Terror Scale Stalker will be any more playable than that. It is better than Princess Huhuran, which is also a shame because it is cheaper. Usually with effects like this, you actually want to trigger it faster, and you want to get this as soon as you can, right? So Terror Scale Stalker only gets a 1-star in my book. There's just not enough Death Rattle things to trigger for Hunter, and also you want to be either playing the 1-drop Hunter or the mid-range Hunter. Tovir Warden, 5-mana 3/5, Battlecry, draw 2 1-cost minions from your deck. Now you're wondering, okay, if I play 1-drop Hunter, right, how do I actually deal with running out of cards? Well, one way to deal with running out of cards is to steady shot your opponent to death, right? Just keep on clicking that power until you win the game, or they beat you in or something like that, right? Or they heal and they cheat. Second way now, look at that. You have a 5-mana 3/5 that draws 2 cards from your deck, right? This is especially powerful because if you're playing, the 1-drop Hunter, you'll be shuffling 1-mana 4/3s into your deck. You'll be shuffling Queen Carnassus Brood into your deck, and just effectively drawing 2 cards is really insane already, because, right, it doesn't really matter if it's 1 cost. You're drawing 2 cards. And we know that Ancient of Lore is super playable. And you're telling me that this is 5 mana? Yeah, this is an easy 5 stars. It's going to be found in every single Hunter deck, like pretty much an auto-include. Next, we have the Stampede. For Stampede, it is a 1 mana. Whenever you play a beast this turn, you get to add a random beast to your hand. So very good if you want to, you know, miracle out something and you actually want to get some late game gas out of nothing, right? Like hunters run out of steam really, really fast, and Stampede would be a card that you can do that. One very interesting note to compare this to Lock and Load is that Lock and Load only triggers off of hunter spells, but it actually gets hunter cards. So when you play Lock and Load and then you get a hunter minion, you go like, oh shoot, I can't recur this, right? It's not a recursive effect. Stampede is different. Stampede, you can actually recur beasts by drawing at random beasts. You're not gonna have non-beasts, right? So it's just gonna filter itself. You can effectively just play Stampede and then play a 1-drop and then keep on playing beasts until you get something that you can't play. Unfortunately, this card is really bad and constructed because if you start with this card, you can't actually do anything with it. It's kind of like an arcane intellect for Hunter, right? And also the fact that it is random is not exactly what you want. Hunter wants a very concise game plan of playing minions that are highly efficient, they have a lot of attack and they go face, and then you win with steady shot. You do not want a game winning condition that summons more random beasts, right? There are some really bad beasts around as well. Okay, there are some really good beasts, obviously, but there are some really bad ones. So I would rate this as pretty bad. I would actually rate this as a 1-star card. So yeah, you probably do not want to pick this. It's very different from Arena. Arena, this is insane. Lastly, we have Dinomancy. It's a 2 mana. Your hero power becomes give a beast +2/+2 for 2 mana. So this is one of the weirder cards, right? Every time you have a card that switches your hero power and switches your game plan completely, becomes really weird, right? I mean, of course, if you are a mid-range hunter, you might want this. But the fact that like if you want to play Dinomancy, you want to trigger this hero power at least 2 times to get your value back, right? Because effectively when you cast this card, it doesn't do anything. So you're doing nothing for 2 mana. The next time you cast this, you give a beast +2/+2. So effectively, it's 4 mana, give a beast +2/+2, which is still not worth it, right? You go to 6 mana, and then you give 2 beasts +2/+2, and then it starts getting better. So you need to trigger this like a lot to make this good. So it's really awkward. It is interesting because this is kind of like a steady shot if you look at it, right? If you give a beast that's already on the board +2/+2 and go face, well, technically you did cast steady shot, and it's even better because, well, you actually casted a +2/+2 and a free steady shot if you may. So that's cool. Obviously, it's not really good against taunt. You actually have to win the board and whatnot. But I think that mid-range hunters might also play this. Another interesting note is that this card is very bad in a multiple, right? If you have 2 Dinomancies, the second copy is actually just trashed here. So I actually don't mind to see some hunter decks or mid-range hunter decks only running 1 copy, because like the second copy really does punish you quite a bit. Unlike Shadow Form, I guess. So I would rate this card like a this one's a weird one. I'm just gonna be oh man, I'm just gonna go ahead and be a little bit more optimistic about this card and rate it a 3 stars. You know, there might be some spicy brews with this, but I don't think it's a top tier card. Finally, we have the Swamp King Dread. It's a 7 mana 9/9 with, after your opponent plays a minion, this attacks it immediately. So, you know, in Constructed, unfortunately, it does either get removed a lot, or, you know, you can actually play around this quite a bit. But man, when you play this card against some matchups, you just become super happy. I mean, imagine playing this against a control, right? And they don't have removal with this. Well, they can't remove the minion and they can't establish their minions. Like, this is just a beater in the correct matchup, right? I mean, in aggro, this seems pretty bad because it's 7 mana and your opponent's just gonna play stuff and beat it in or whatever. But yeah, in mid-range and control matchups, this seems pretty damn good. I give this a 4 stars. I'm pretty optimistic about this card too. So overall, Hunter's got some pretty sick cards. Onwards to Mage. The Mage secret is Open the Way Gate. For 1 mana, it's a quest that when you cast 6 spells that you did not put in your deck list, you get a Time Warp. And Time Warp is a 5 mana card that says, take an extra turn. Oh, take an extra turn. Yeah, so first of all, it's very tricky to play this card because you need to actually find 6 spells that are different, right? So the ways to find this are like you can discover a mage spell, you can RNG, you can ask Pavel for a mage card that's not in your deck. You know, you can just try and use Cabal Courier and find some warlock or priest spells or something like that, right? Or you can also be lucky. You can starve the coin because coin works, and then you can also play Burgly Bully or any minions that generate spells that are not found in your deck list, right? So that's good. The reward is amazing. The reward is actually amazing. Take an extra turn, effectively makes so many combos possible, and effectively can just win you the game. This is what I predict to be the new Freeze Mage, right? Because Freeze Mage got nerfed. Ice Lance is no longer in standard, so you can't actually play that. But Time Warp Mages are the new Freeze Mages. So there are a lot of different combos you can set up with this. You can have some, Sorcerer's Apprentice and Antonidas combos. You can have some Arcane Giant Time Warp combos. You can even have some Alexstrasza in shenanigans, right? You can just play Arcane Giant, Time Warp. Next turn, Alexstrasza your face. Boom, boom. That's 15 damage. Your opponent doesn't even have a chance to kill your Arcane Giants. Open the Waygate is my pick for the best card in the GORO set. 6 stars. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Yep. I only give 1 6-star card in each compendium, and Open the Waygate gets my choice for the best card in the expansion. Alright, onwards to our mage cards. We have Arcanologist, Secret Lady is a 2-mana 2/3 with Battle Cry. Draw a secret from your deck. It's a 2-mana 2/3 that draws a card. Now that is pretty sweet, yeah? I think it's going to be found in a lot of Open the Waygate decks because this being a 2-mana 2/3 that draws a card is insane, right? Freeze Mages play Loot Hoarder all the time, play Novice Engineers all the time, and this actually has a great body and gets to draw a specific card in your deck. Now that is crazy, right? Imagine if you're running 2 copies of Ice Block, for example, and you're running 2 copies of Arcanologist. You're actually running 4 copies of Ice Block in a sense, right? So making your deck more consistent is always really, really good. I don't know if this is going to be played in a new Tempo Secret Mage or something like that, but the rate of this card is just out of this world, right? So I would be looking to play this card as much as I can. This is a 4-star card. Flame Geyser is a 2-mana deal 2 damage with add a 1-mana 1/2 elemental to your hand. So the point of this card is to, kind of deal 2 damage to something, and then with the elemental you want to trigger the new elemental effects, right? The elementals that give you an extra bonus if you have another elemental that you played last turn. So this is kind of like a setup card, but we know that 2-mana deal 2 damages are not good. Lava Shock was not seen played at all, so this is a very easy 0 stars. Next we have Shimmering Tempest, a 2-mana 2/1 with Death Rattle. Add a random mage spell to your hand. Very similar to Babbling Book, but not as good because Babbling Book is an immediate effect. You get to actually play the spell immediately. Shimmering Tempest, it is a 2-mana 2/1, so it does have the extra attack, but being a Death Rattle means that you actually need to play this as early as possible so you can actually use the mage spell later, right? So yeah, it's a little bit of a delayed Babbling Book, but still a really strong effect because mage spells we know are very high up the curve, and you really want to be playing these cards that add random mage spells to your hand. Otherwise, how are you going to trigger Open the Waygate, right? I think it's pretty much going to be only found there. The problem with playing this in Tempo Mage is because you're playing a 2-mana 2/1, and by turn 2 you actually want to start beating your opponent's face in and hopefully finish the games with spells and stuff like that, right? So I would still rate this pretty highly. I give this 4 stars. It's still a very, very strong effect that replaces itself, but probably not found in Tempo Mage, I think. Alright, next what do we have here? We have Mana Bind, 3-mana secret that when your opponent casts a spell, add a copy to your hand that costs 0. So, it gets pretty tricky because, you can get an insane spell. Constructed, we know that you can get like Kazakus Potion even, right? And getting a Kazakus Potion with 0 seems pretty good. Unfortunately, this does not have a lot of interaction with your opponent because your opponent still gets to dictate what they want to do. Secrets are supposed to be, sort of like a roadblock, try to kind of like make your opponent play really weirdly, and Mana Bind doesn't actually do that. So it's gonna be a little awkward, and the fact that it can trigger off stuff like Coin and stuff like Power Shield or Coil or something like that. I mean, it's good to have one of these, but at the same time, you're paying 3 mana for that. No, this is not good. I want to give this a 0, but yeah, I just don't see this card being played. I'm still gonna give it a 0 star. Alright, fine. I'm gonna give it a 1 star. It has a little bit of application, at least with the... Nope, lied. 0 star. It's bad. Next, we have Molten Reflection. It's a 4 mana, basically Phases Manipulator in a spell form. Choose a friendly minion and then summon a copy with it. So basically, you want to use this as combo mechanics, because why would you use this as a fair card? Like, you do not want to be using this with, oh, I get an extra 5/5. Wow, I played a 4 mana 5/5. No, 4 mana 5/5s are not good and constructed. You have to be doing something coherent, and you have to doing something cheating, right? Cheating would be something like, you know, Freeze Mage would be like cheating. So you need to actually abuse this system somehow. So abusing this would be something like, you know, copying a Sorcerer's Apprentice, you know, copying a legendary that has a good onboard effect, such as Zera or something like that. So yeah, the fact that this actually does get reduced by Sorcerer's Apprentice makes this really scary. And might be found in the new, you know, 2-turn kill, open the way gate time warp mage, you know, stuff like that. And yeah, this would be one of the valuable tools in that. Outside of that though, I don't think it's going to be played. So I'm going to give this a 3 star. It's not exactly just the specific archetype card, because it's good enough to be a card you put in your deck, but it's also not a good card that you can find in other decks. Steam Surger, 4 mana 5/4. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, you add a Flame Geyser to your hand. And we know that Flame Geyser was the 2 mana deal 2 damage, and then you add a 1 mana 1/2 to your hand, right? So this is effectively really good, right? It has a lot of value for a 4-drop. It's a 4 mana 5/4, which is respectable, right? It's on the curve. And you actually get a free 2 mana deal 2, and that card makes a 1 mana 1/2, so it's a lot of cards that you get to put in. Unfortunately, I don't think mages would want to go the elemental route, and getting a Flame Geyser as a reward is not as good, right? Compare this to Goblin Blast Mage. Goblin Blast Mage did an Arcane Missiles on cast immediately, so that is like much better, and I don't think this is as good, so I would rate this a 2 stars. Primordial Glyph, 2 mana, discover a spell, reduce its cost by 2. Keep in mind that you're playing mage, so you're basically discovering a mage spell and reducing its cost by 2. Are you joking me? Is this card not the most insane card I've ever seen? First of all, it's an auto include in the Open the Waygate deck. Second of all, you actually do want to play this in your Tempo Mage as well. Like, I do not see any mage other than Freeze Mage, which is dead by the way, not play this, because, well, let's look at the applications, right? You can actually play this on turn 2 and then discover a more expensive card and then play it earlier. So you can Primordial Glyph on 2, and then on 5 you can suddenly Firelines Portal, or you can suddenly Flame Strike, or Blizzard on 4. Well, like, your opponent does not expect that. Like, it's really hard to beat Innervate effects, right? Because your opponent can't really play around it. Second application, say you have a Sorcerer's Apprentice and then you play this. Well, you're actually discovering a spell that costs 4 less, right? This gets reduced by 1, and the new spell gets reduced by 2, and also gets reduced another 1 by the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So this is effectively a negative 2 mana card when you have 1 Sorcerer's Apprentice. Okay, let's not even get to some shenanigans, such as like 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then you discover Molten Reflection, and then you discover more Primordial Glyphs, and you know, you get what I mean? So this is an easy 5 star for me. It just gets crazy. And also, imagine this with like stuff like Gas and Auctioneer, right? Like, there's just so many stuff you can do with this card that is just insane. You're also picking the best 1 out of 3. Now, this card is too good. Next, we got Meteor. It's a 6 mana deal 15 damage to a minion. Oh, whoops. And 3 damage to adjacent ones. Well, this is just like, you know, a more cute board clear, I guess. Explosive Shot was not played in Constructed because, you know, your opponents are not stupid, okay? They're not going to be, you know, playing 2 health, 5 health, 2 health for you to exactly hit that on
What should
turn
I add to
5
my daring
and
report
exactly
to
have
take
this to
warrior
be
from the
good.
new
Yeah, explosive shot was not same play because your opponent is not gonna walk into that, and you have to have it's so specific to make it work, right? So I think this is actually just unplayable. It's stone cold unplayable in constructed. The only way you can play this is if you discover it and you actually want to use meteor as a random effect on this specific board, or you get it in babbling book or something, right? So this is not going to be played. 0 star. Finally, we have the Mage Legendary. It's Pyros, 2 mana 2/2 with Death Rattle. Return this to your hand as a 6 mana 6/6, and then return it to your hand when that dies to a 10 mana 10/10. Now this is a very slow card. It's still really good though because it effectively draws you 2 cards, right? A 2 mana 2/2 that draws you 2 cards is pretty decent, and it's really hard to shrug off the amount of value that this card generates, especially in stuff like Temple Mage or something like that, where you actually tend to run out of cards. The downside, of course, is that you're playing a below the curve minion at every single run, where you're playing a 2 mana 2/2, you're playing a 6 mana 6/6, and then you're playing a 10 mana 10/10, right? So, do you want an 18 mana 18/18 value one card split between 3 forms? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't want that. It's a big value card, but Hearthstone is a game that's all about tempo. I think this card, if it's in other classes like Priest, it would have been really good. But you know, the fact that it's a mage, it doesn't really, it can't really take advantage of this recursive and value-wise minions. So I'm not too confident in this card. I'm just gonna rate this a 1 star. Alright, next up we have the Paladin quest. It is the last Kaleidosaur. For the quest, you need to play 6 spells on your own minions. And the reward is you get Galvadon. Galvadon is a really strong card. It's a 5 mana 5/5 that gets to Battle Cry, adapt 5 times. So you get to actually make crazy Wind Fury stealth with freaking a lot of attack, or like Divine Shields, and it just gets crazy or something like that, right? The quest is actually harder to trigger than you think. To cast 6 spells on your minions is very difficult because A, it requires a minion on the board, and 2, it requires to use these cards that cast spells on your board, and 3, you do need to dodge removal and you need to survive early game. There's just so many questions that need to be answered if you're playing this deck. Basically, you want to play an all-in deck of this, right? You basically want to cast as many spells as possible, play something like Divine Favor to refill your hand, and then go crazy, right? And just go like, okay, if you remove my minion, that's fine. If you don't, then hey, I can win. It's like a very all-in deck. I think this is not bad. Like, the reward is insane. The reward is just effectively win the game if your opponent doesn't have a removal to deal with a stealth creature. But this is actually going to be a little prohibited, so you actually need to make a deck of this. But at least this is going to spawn a new Paladin deck, so I'm still going to rate it 4 stars. I don't think this deck is going to be any good, but this quest itself is really good, so 4-star card. Alright, the next spell we have is a 1 mana Paladin spell. It's 1 mana adapt a friendly minion. You're gonna play this if you're gonna play the last Kaleidosaur quest, because you need more buffs, and this is just a better Blessing of Might. It's just a better Hand of Protection because you get to choose. So yeah, you play this if you play that deck. That's all. 3 stars. Lost in the Jungle, 1 mana summon 2 1/1 Silverhand Recruit. So effectively the same thing as Alley Cat, effectively the same things as Living Roots, but it does come in the spell form, and the 1/1 Recruits does give you some bodies to at least put your spell buffs in, or get some triggers off of a gold wide board. Cult Master might even be a thing, who knows, but at the end of the day, this is just a solid early game card and nothing really too special about it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give this a 3 stars. Let's just give it 3. Next we have a 2 mana 2/2 Hydrologist. Is a Murloc and a Battlecry. You get to discover a Paladin secret if you're playing the Paladin class. If you're playing Hunter or Mage, you get to discover their classes. And if you're playing not a secret class, you get to discover a Paladin secret. Is this good? Well, compared to the Dark Peddler, it seems pretty strong, right? It's a 2 mana 2/2 that draws a card, it discovers a card, but the fact that this discovers it exactly a secret makes this a little bit worse than Peddler. Peddler can discover so many good cards. You can discover a Flame Imp if you need one, you can discover Soulfire if you need one, you can discover Shift to Zerus for God's sake if you need that. So Peddler is way better. This one, the secret is really easy to play around in my opinion. You do get a choice. but some of the choices are really bad, and you might get wrecked a little bit. So I'm not really high on this card. I'm just gonna rate this a 3-star card because at the end of the day, it's still a 2-mana 2/2 that gives you a card. Life Fuse Stegodon, 4-mana 3/4. If you ever want the Silverhand Recruits to be really strong, you want to play this card because for 4-mana 3/4, it does adapt your Silverhand Recruits. So it gives all your Silverhand Recruits a adaptation. Preferably attack, because that 1/1s turn to 4/1s are really good. Or poison. If it's poison, your 1/1s get poison and you can just get to wipe your opponent's board, right? Unfortunately, you do need a lot of things to work out for this board, for this card to work out. You actually need some Silverhand Recruits. You actually need to play this card, and at the end of the day, it's a 4-mana 3/4, so it's not really exciting by any means. So, while this is a very cool effect, I don't think it's gonna work out. 0 stars. Spike Ridged Steed is a 6-mana 2/2/6 for a minion and taunt, and then when it dies, you get another 2/6 taunt. Now that is pretty awesome, right? If you add the stats up together, it's a 6-mana 4/12. And that's a lot of stats. Usually 4/12 minions are 9-mana cards. And this is, well, this is really good. Really strong against some aggro decks, right? If you aggro and you see that someone made a +2/+6 taunt minion, and when you kill it, it becomes a 2/6 again. Oh my god, you are just gonna cry like a little girl, okay? Like imagine playing this against a face warrior. You just win the game immediately, right? Which is really good. Because other than that, the application of this card is really bad, right? Because it's really slow, and you know when if you're paladin and you're slow, you lose to every single combo deck. You lose to every single control deck. Like for example, Jade Druid, you can't beat that with this card. You only get to beat aggro. But the really good thing is that you do actually beat aggro decks, right? You just can't beat those polymorphs. You can't beat those hexes. You can't beat those silences or whatever. Silences are not really that played, but in the case, you can't beat the control decks. But one card to beat aggro is really good. So I would rate this a 2-star card. It's a good sideboard card if the meta gets really aggressive. Next we have a 7-mana weapon for Paladin. It's a 4/3. After you attack, summon 2 1/1 Silverhand Recruits. So it's a 4/3 weapon, so you get a lot of charges out of it. And you get a lot of value out of it, because for 7 mana, you get to summon 6 1/1s over the course of 3 turns, of course. And you actually get to deal 12 damage. Wow! Unfortunately, you can only play this on turn 7. The fact that True Silver Champion is so good is because it costs 4 mana and it comes out really fast. This comes out so super slow. So yeah, this is just not gonna see play. 0. Primal Fin Champion is a 2-mana 1/2 with Death Rattle. When this dies, return all spells you cast on this minion to your hand. So if you buff this like insane with like Blessing of Kings, or you buff this with Adaptation or something like that, and then this dies, well, you get to get it back, and that's really good. This is really good with the all-in Paladin deck that we mentioned from the Kaleidosaur. So yeah, I mean, you're all in anyways, so who cares if your opponent hexes it or whatever, right? You're all in, it doesn't really matter. So this card is actually not bad in that deck. I would rate this a 3 stars because at the end of the day, it is still a 2-mana 1/2. You know, your opponent could play around it by just, you know, hexing, polymorphing and whatnot. And yeah, it's really expensive because it's not really a 2-drop. You have to play something else with it. But the snowball potential is definitely there. So 3 stars, yeah. Dino Size! 8 mana, make a minion a 10/10 is, you know, it's reasonable. I mean, Pyroblast is played in Mage, so it's not too far off to say that this will be played in Paladin just for the burst potential. We know that Paladins have very bad burst, so making a mid-range Paladin able to burst your opponent down actually makes things a little tricky from turn 8 onwards, because your opponent has to play around Dino Size every time they don't kill your minions, and when they do kill your minions, well, you know, you can just make more, and it just basically makes all your minions kind of threatening on the board, right? So that's pretty good. Unfortunately, it does cost 8 mana, very difficult to pull off in Constructed, and you know, what are you going to make a 10/10 anyways, right? You don't have like you know, exactly the right minions to buff with like Argent Squires or whatnot. Obviously, if you somehow find a stealth and Wind Fury minion, then you can play this and do 20 damage, then that's pretty cool. But I'm not too optimistic that you can actually get that sort of adapt going on. So I'm gonna rate this a 1 star. Finally, we have Sunkeeper Tarim, 6 mana 3/7 taunt with Battlecry. Udamon on every single other creature. So all creatures get changed to 3/3s. So you know the best way to do this is you can make your opponents 3/3s, and then you make your 1/1s 3/3s, and then it becomes really good. It also has taunt, so then you know it's a little bit more defensive. So you would think that wow, this card is really good against Jade Druid, wow, because you make all the Jade Druids really small. Well, my counter is that well, if you make the Jade Druid small, they're just gonna make more, and then what? And then you're just gonna cry like a little girl, right? So yeah, unfortunately that's not really that good. In the control matchups, this is actually like pretty good too, right? At the same time, it's kind of like a better Edric, because Edric was 7 mana card that sets all your opponents attack to 1. Saw some play. This one does set them to 3/3, so there's still some threats, right? If your opponent can actually kill this 3/7, then your opponent still has 3/3s. Not to mention if they actually have a card that's an effect that stays on the board, that you're not really removing them. So I think a lot of people are overrating this card for sure, and I think this card actually might actually see some cut in some cards, some decks as well. So I'm just gonna rate this a 3 stars. Alright, and those are all the cards from Paladin. Onwards to Priest. Awaken the Makers is the new Priest quest with summon 7 Death Rattle minions, and if you do that, you get Amara, the Warden of Hope. Warden of Hope is a 5 mana 8/8 that basically renos you for 40! Wow, your opponent, your hero actually gets to be 40 health, and that's pretty good. You also get a 5 mana 8/8 taunt to stabilize the board, and yeah. So how hard is it to trigger this quest? Well, summoning 7 Death Rattle minions is, you know, not that hard, especially with all the new Death Rattle Priest minions that are coming up. And how good is the 5 mana 8/8? Well, the 5 mana 8/8 is pretty decent. I mean, it does let you stabilize on the board. You play this immediately, and you probably got it against like an aggro deck, because you know it's really hard to deal with a 5 mana 8/8 taunt. When you play Reno for 6 mana, 4/6, and you do not solve your opponent's board, your face warrior opponent is just gonna keep on hitting your face, and then your Reno value is kind of like gone. So the 5 mana 8/8 body is really good, and the taunt body is also really good. So I would think this is okay. I think this is the least exciting of all the quests, because it just gives you a 5 mana 8/8, you know, Reno or something like that. Like all the other quests seems much more exciting, but at the end of the day, this is a good card. So I'm gonna rate this a 4 stars. Onwards to our Priest cards. We have Binding Heal. For 1 mana, you get to restore 5 health to a minion and your hero. Wow, talk about value, right? There's 2 flash heals in 1. Although you cannot flash heal your opponent, so you can't do some Arcanine flash heal your opponent shenanigans. You can't OTK or something like that. This is purely a defensive card. So yeah, unfortunately, it's really hard to get value from both parts, right? Like restoring 5 health to your hero doesn't seem that good, and also restoring 5 health to a minion. Well, how often are you gonna get a minion to receive the full 5 heal in constructed, right? Usually minions either die or they stay alive, and your opponent doesn't really care about them. You're gonna have to make another way of doing it, right? So this is just straight unplayable, 0 star. Radiant Elemental. For 2 mana, you get a 2/3. Oh, more 2 mana cards for Priest. Is this a good one? This is an elemental that makes your spells cost 1 less, right? It's kind of like a Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now, this can enable some pretty stupid stuff with Priest, right? You can actually play Power Shield for 0. You can play Mind Blast for 1, and then if you couple this with some, you know, Gasset Auctioneer or some Shadow Visions, that's also a new card and whatnot, you could make something like a Miracle Priest happen. So this is a good enabler for that. It's also a 2 mana 2/3, so if you play Miracle Priest and you're going against something like an aggro deck, you can actually play a 2 mana 2/3 and not be unhappy as well. So this is a reasonable card, and it does enable a lot of stuff to happen. So I'd say it's a 4-star card. Alright, next we have a Totolan Shell Razor. For 4 mana, you get a 2/6 taunt, and when it dies, it gives a random friendly minion +1/+1. Now, this is exactly the type of effect that you want to be together, right? If a minion has taunts, you have to kill it, and then it will buff a minion that does not have taunts. So technically speaking, this effect will go off quite a bit. It's also a Death Rattle, so it does help out your quest, and it is a very big dirtly creature. So a 6 health minion is really, really good to defend the board against, say, an aggro deck, right? It's just really, really solid about that. So I think this is a card that you do want to play in the Death Rattle deck, and you do want to consider. for sure. So I would give this a 3 stars. Crystalline Oracle, it's a 1-mana 1/1 Death Rattle. Copy a card from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. Now, this one is the worst one out of all the 1-mana 1/1 cycles, right? All the 1-mana 1/1 cyclers usually draw a card immediately. Swashbuckler, Babbling Book, and also the new Macaw. They all draw your card immediately. This is a Death Rattle, and it's a little bit harder to you to get value out of it. It does synergize with the quest, and it does synergize with some Death Rattle shenanigans and other cards that priests might have. But at the end of the day, getting a card that's a little bit slower is not as good. So I'm just going to give this a 4 star. It's still a really good card, but it's not the 1-mana 1/1 cantrip 5 stars that we are used to seeing. Mirage Caller, 3-mana 2/3 Battlecry. Choose a friendly minion and then summon a 1/1 copy of it. So pretty much similar to Shadowcaster, but you get to do it immediately. But you also don't get the summon effect. So it's a little awkward in the fact that you have to choose something with Death Rattle for it to actually work. As a priest, you're not going to be playing any Divine Shield minions, or you're not going to be playing any Charge minions or something like that, right? So you have to copy something with Death Rattle, and it's, in my opinion, very, very difficult to actually copy a minion with this. And if you don't, wow, the floor of this card is super damn low, right? You're playing a 3-mana 2/3 that only summons a 1/1. That's a very, very bad floor. So if you're playing this card, you're gonna save this card until you can freaking play it, right? You can play it on turn 4 with a Crystalline Oracle. You can play it on turn 7 with a Shifting Shade or something like that. You just have to save this card for days. And this card is also terrible against aggro. So I think this card is only good in the specific meta, which is a very control-based meta. And even then, there might be better options out there. 2 stars. Free from Amber. Take hello to the new Forbidden Shaping, as we have an 8-mana card that discovers an 8+ drop and summons it. So keep in mind that you can summon some 9 drops and 10 drops, and they're all up for you to choose. You get to choose the best one. And arguably speaking, this might be better than Forbidden Shaping. Now, this is not better than Forbidden Shaping in the sense that it cannot get you other class cards. So you cannot get Tyrion. You cannot get, you know, some busted stuff like King Crush or something like that. You could get a new Dino that charges the face for 7/7, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think this is still a great card as a control priest finisher. And yeah, the fact that you're discovering the best one makes it a little bit better, because, well, there are a lot of you know, things that are super bad that cost 8+ or more. You know, all the old gods are pretty bad. You know, there's for God's sake, there's an Ultra Sword now. So the fact that this discovers is actually pretty decent. So I would rate this a 4-star card. Oh baby, Shadow Visions. For 2 mana, you get to discover a copy of a spell in your deck. Now, we rated this 0 stars in Arena because it's technically unplayable there, but this is the card you want when you're building a priest deck. If you're building a priest deck, you're building a shenanigans filled deck anyways. You need something to combo stuff out, right? You just need this type of effect to make crazy stuff happen, right? Your opponent, I just can't imagine a control matchup losing. So say you play against a Reno Mage or something like that, right? And you're playing 2 copies of Shadow Visions and 2 copies of Thoughtsteal. How are they gonna beat that? They're never gonna beat that. And of course, we have some very cool shenanigans with Shadow Visions discovering itself to make more stuff happen. That's why Radiant Elemental is really good, because it actually reduces the cost of Shadow Vision. So this is like the linchpin. This is like the keystone of the combo priest deck. So yeah, 5-star card. Like, you just have to use this when you're building some silly combo priest. And if there is a build of combo priest that's really consistent, then this would be the major player. Also, it also lets you not need to turn 2 hero power and emote. Although obviously you want to save it for your combo potentials. But yeah, really strong. Curious Glimmer Roots is a 3-mana 3/3 that rewards you if you are smart. Okay, so you battle card, you look at 3 cards. One of them is one of card that your opponent started with, and the other 2 are cards that your opponent does not have in their deck. So you have to be a bit clever, although it doesn't really take that much to be clever, right? Because the other 2 cards could literally be any neutral card and any of their class cards. So if you see a freaking Magma Rager, then, oh, for God's sake, it's not Magma Rager, okay? I'm telling you, 100% it is not Magma Rager. Say it is Magma Rager, and you go like, oh, Well, so what? I don't even want a Magma Rager in the first place. And I'm playing a deck versus Magma Rager? Doesn't really matter, right? So this card is just good if you're actually not digital dummy. Like if you have a little bit of a... If you sit there and think a bit, it's a 3-mana 3/2 that draws a card and it thought steals for 1. And that's really, really powerful. So I rate this a 4-star. But if you're a digital dummy, this is a 0-star. It's unplayable if you're stupid. And finally, we have Lyra the Sun Shard.
Someone asked if the Priest Legendary is good. It is fantastic. Yes,
Priest
maybe
Legendary?
too good. I apologize if it's too good, but it's real good.
Priest Legendary?
We haven't announced it yet. It's yeah. It's a dude. Every class gets an answer to it.
So the Blizzard developer came out and said that Lyra the Sun Shard, 5-mana 3/5 elemental, is too good. His words. I apologize if it's too good, okay? So what does it do? Well, whenever you cast a spell, add a random priest spell to your hand. Well, there are some really cool stuff you can do with this, especially in Miracle Priest, right? So Miracle Priest, you could do something like, you know, I don't know, play this 2 Radiant Elementals, and then Mind Blast, Mind Blast, Mind Blast, Mind Blast, Mind Blast. Power Shield, Mind Blast, Mind Blast, you know, you can do something crazy like that, right? What's the downside? Well, the downside is that you might stop. You might actually just stop, right? Why? What do you mean by stop? You actually add some pre-spell that does not cycle, and then you're screwed. For example, Potion of Madness, Shadow Madness, Mind Control, Dragonfire Potion, right? Any spell that does not have a target or does cost 1,000,000, you stop the combo, and then your opponent goes like, oh, let me just kill that off because I'm gonna die if I don't kill that off, right? And then you're sad. So yeah, I think this is also pretty weird in the sense that it's random, so you do not get a stable reward from this. So you can't, if you're making a deck that's tailored all around this, and then this does not RNG into your favor, then you're pretty screwed. It's not Antonidas. Antonidas always gets your Fireball, so you know what the hell you're getting, and Fireballs are good cards. Well, turns out there are a lot of shitty priest cards, like Mind Visions and stuff like that. So you have to combo this with Radiant Elemental to go off, and then if you do, good for you. If you don't, then not good for you. I think this is still a good card. It's a 4-star card, but I do not agree with that this priest legendary is perhaps too good, right? I mean, let's be honest. Based on Blizzard's track record of making priest legendaries, they're never too good. Next up, we have the Caverns Below. It is the Rogue quest card with play 4 minions with the same name. So it's 4 minions. You can't actually play 4 spells. You can't actually play 4 weapons. It's minions. So what is the Crystal Core? Well, the Crystal Core is a 5-mana, pretty much like an enchantment kind of thing where your opponent can't remove it. And for the rest of the game, your minions are 5/5. So no matter where they are 5/5s. If you summon them later, it's 5/5s. And yeah, I mean, what immediately pops up to mind is Violet Teacher. Violet Teacher is a 5/5. That summons 5/5s. That's pretty cool. Morose is a 5/5. That summons 5/5. And you can also make some chargers that are 5/5s. That's pretty good. Super difficult to make this quest work. I mean, you're saying that you have to make 4 minions with the same name, and you have to survive early game. I mean, holy jeez, this is gonna be a very difficult quest to complete, and it's gonna be really interesting to see how this can actually work. So you have to be filling your decks with like Shadow Steps, with cards that draw multiple cards. Pandaren Brewmaster might get in there. Gassen Ferryman might get in there. Shadowcaster is probably gonna get in there. You know, it's just gonna be very hard to make this work. And also, you don't want to be playing any big cards like 7/7s or something like that because they get nerfed. But it actually does synergize with Edwin, because Edwin becomes a 5/5, and then if you combo it, it becomes a 7/7, 9/9, and so on. So it does kind of synergize with Edwin. Not that bad. But yeah, I think this quest is still very, very difficult to play. So I'm gonna rate this a question mark, because I don't think it's good enough. And question mark in star language is 1 star. Okay, I don't think it's good enough. Alright, first we have Hallucination. Discover a card from your opponent's class. So it's effectively Swashbuckler without the body, and you get to just pick a card of your choice. Now, this is not as good as Swashbuckler, because Swashbuckler not only gets you a 1/1, it gets you a 1/1 with charge, because I'm in charge now, right? Exactly. Hallucination does not fetch patches. So this is purely a 1 mana draw card. And hey, that's actually fine. We saw that Journey Below was a card that was played. A 1 mana draw card is good in Rogue, especially because of Garrison Auctioneer. Sure, Conceal might be rotating out, but Garrison Auctioneer is still going to be very, very strong in Rogues because they have so many cheap spells and they don't do on a cycle. So Hallucination gets a 3-star in my book. Razor Petal Lasher, 2 mana 2/2, and add a Razor Petal that deals 1 damage to your hand. And Razor Petals are 1 mana, deal 1 damage. So, okay, let's be honest here. Why would you want to play a 2 mana 2/2 in the first place? Well, it better have a very crazy effect, like, something like a Undercity Huckster would be a good effect. But adding a 1 mana deal 1 damage does not really seem that good, right? Okay, sure, you can say that it helps your combo potential out, it helps your Gas and Auctioneer out, but 1 mana deal 1 is not what you want as Rogue. You want the tempo plays. You want to sap your opponent's creatures, you want to play big creatures like Tomb Pillager and then hit your opponent's face, which by the way is rotating out. But yeah, that's like the point of Rogues, right? To play a lot of minions and to disrupt your opponent's board and then just hit them in the face. This does not accomplish that. So this is a 1-star card. Speaking of, Razor Petal Volley is a 2 mana spell that adds 2 of these Razor Petals to your hand instead of the body. So for 2 mana, instead of a 2/2 body, you get 1 more Razor Petal. Now, this is also a little awkward. It's a little bit weirder because it does have 3 spells attached to itself. So you can't say that, oh, the Razor Petal Lasher is just strictly better, right? No, this one does have 3 spell casts. You cast this, you then cast 2 Razor Petals, so you turn this into a Nourish if you're playing Gas and Auctioneer, right? But at the same time, this doesn't really do too much, and yeah, this is not really what Rogues want to do in the first place. So, 1-star card. Next we have Envenom Weapon. For 3 mana, you give your weapon poisonous, so you can kill anything. Pretty cool because you can actually hero power and then play this, and then you get 2 assassinates in a sense, right? A little bit worse in Constructed because there are some matchups where poisonous doesn't really do anything, especially in the aggro matchups. And also you're still taking damage, right? You're not really establishing much. So this is like a huge tempo play, but you do need to actually hit something worthwhile. And I think the targets is really, really sad. You can't really even hit anything, right? Aggro matches is really bad. If you hit control, then that's also pretty bad. And yeah, I just don't see this happening too much. So I'd say that I'm only going to give this like a 1-star. Do keep in mind that this thing does not work with Blade Flurry because Blade Flurry destroys your weapon and deals damage like Shadow Flame. When you Shadow Flame an Emperor Cobra, it doesn't work because Shadow Flame does the damage. When you Blade Flurry a poisonous weapon, it doesn't work with the poisonous. Next, we have a Mimic Pord. Mimic Pord, 3 mana, draw a card, and then add a copy of it to your hand. So you're basically drawing 2 copies of the next card. And yeah, I guess you would play this if you want to play the quest. And yeah, you probably don't want to play it with anything else. I mean, there are some crazy shenanigans that might happen, such as, you get something like 2 Eviscerates, or you get 2 of your favorite cards or whatnot. That'd be pretty good. Unfortunately, it is really slow. I mean, let me just say, Arcane Intellect is a very good effect, right? Arcane Intellect is really good for mage because they can dig deeper into their burn spells. But once again, Rogue is not kind of like that. Rogue is very like a tempo-oriented, proactive, and then disrupt you kind of thing, right? Whereas Tempo Mage is more of a, I'm going to play a lot of cards first, and then I'm going to give up the board, and then fireball your face, right? So yeah, Mimic Card is not as good as Arcane Intellect in that case. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a 3-star card. I think it's on the lower end of stuff. Obsidian Shard is a 4 mana 3/3 with cost 1 less for each card you've played from another class. So it does reward you stealing your opponent's class cards and playing it, and then you get perhaps a 3 mana 3/3 weapon or a 2 mana 3/3 weapon, and that's pretty good, right? Fire Warx is a very good card. Unfortunately, there is no way you can actually play this on turn 2. There's actually a 0%. Okay, fine. There is a non-0% chance. Okay, fine. You can Swashbuckler into coin Swashbuckler into 2 Moonfires and then play the 2 Moonfires and then play this as a 2 mana. Okay, But the fact that this is not going to come down in turn 2 and probably not going to come down in turn 3 makes this a really, really bad card. It gets blanked up late game. I mean, it's like an Assassin's Blade that costs cheaper. So I am not excited about this card at all. 0 stars. Biteweed is Edwin Jr., 2 mana 1/1 with combo. Gain +1/+1 for each other card you've played this turn. Now, obviously, if you have multiple Edwins, then it gets a little bit more consistent. Unfortunately, this is a 1/1, so slash Edwin in half, and then combo gain +1/+1 for each other card. So slash Edwin in half again. So this is strictly a super tiny Edwin, and I don't think I want to play that, even though it's just a 2 mana card. I think it's very hard to make this work, especially if you're playing multiples this and Edwin. So if you are playing all of these cards, then well, you're just making it look a silly board and whatnot, right? So yeah, I do like that the fail case of this is like 2 mana 2/2. If you play just 1 card, and you play 2 cards, it's a 2 mana 3/3. So at least that's reasonable. The don't expect to make like a super big Biteweed or anything, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and pick this at 2 stars. Fine, Vile Spine Slayer, 5 mana 3 for combo, destroy a minion. Well, this is interesting because it's an assassinate on the stick, and the 3/4 minion is actually pretty decent. So for assassinate, you can spawn a free 3-cost minion, right? We still don't exactly know if Temple Rose are gonna be a thing. I mean, it is a big beatdown card, right? Like, Assassinate's not played because it's a 0/0, but if you suddenly change Assassinate to a 3/4, I can guarantee you it's gonna start seeing play. Especially how combo is so easy to activate and constructed with all your preps, with all your backstabs, with all your other stuff, you know. It's just very easy to make this work. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this is a very strong card, it's a 5-star card, and Rose would play this. Finally, we got Sherazin, Corpse Flower is a 4 mana 5/3 with Death Rattle, go dormant. Play 4 cards in a turn to revive this minion. So it's a 4 mana 5/3 that practically never dies. But if you get to play 4 cards, then oh, it comes back to life, yay! And then it dies, and it comes back to life, yay! Honestly though, this is not going to happen a lot, okay? Like, I can imagine this happening one time. In the turn, because if you're gonna play 4 cards in the turn, you're probably gonna play something like Edwin or something to back it up or anything, right? You're not going to trigger this multiple times. Rogue is a class that goes all in quite frequently, and then if your opponent can't deal with your cards immediately, then they lose the game. If they can deal with them, then you lose the game. So it's really, really all in. And what do you get for this all in? Well, the first body is a 4 mana 5/3, so that's terrible. And then the reward is another 4 mana 5/3? No, I think you do not want this card in your deck. And then your deck is actually better off not having this card. So it's a 0 star for me. Alright, onwards to the Shaman cards. We have Unite the Murlocs. Oh, summon 10 Murlocs. That's all. You just need to summon 10 Murlocs. And the reward is you get Megafin. Who is Megafin? Good questions. Megafin is a 5 mana 8/8. Holy jeez, that is a huge Murloc. 5 mana 8/8 with fill your hand with random Murlocs. Now that is a crazy effect because, well, if your hand is all Murlocs, you basically gonna swarm your opponent and kill them that way. So the Murloc Shaman deck might be pretty interesting in that you're actually running a lot of Murlocs, right? Because as soon as you finish this quest, the sooner you get the 5 mana 8/8, and because you're playing Murlocs, they're very cheap, right? Murlocs are usually very cheap. You get to actually fill your hand with random Murlocs and then just swarm. A very one-dimensional game plan. My guess is that this type of Shaman is going to be the worst type of Shaman. I think the Elemental Shaman is still going to be better. I think the Jade Shaman is going to be better. I think Aggro Shaman is also going to be better. So as a quest, I think it's still powerful. I would not rate this as powerful as the other quests though, because you have better options out there. So, 3-star card. Alright, starting with the Air Elemental as our first pick, a 1 mana 2/1. Can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. So it's a small fairy dragon that's also an elemental. Very important because it is an elemental tag, so it's not completely useless. It does help you trigger your elemental stuff as well. And yeah, I'd say that this text only comes out against the mages, and that's really about it. Every other class can really deal with a 2/1 really, really well. And so I don't rate this card too highly. I think if you're playing elemental deck, there's better choices out there. So, 1-star card. The big brother of that would be the Hot Spring Guardian. It's a 3 mana 2 for taunt with Battlecry, restore 3 health. Now, this card is really, really sick because it's a 3 mana 2 for taunt, which is already really good, you know. Squirming Tentacle sees play in Arena, but not in Constructed because it's not good enough. Well, this actually gets to restore 3 health to a target of your choice. So if you're against aggro, well, this is effectively a 3 mana 2/7, let's be honest. If you're against a control, you can heal your own minions and preserve them for a little bit more. And on top of that, it's also an elemental. So yeah, this is just a huge package to come with this card, and it's just super versatile, super good. I really like this card, and it's gonna see play in elemental decks. I am gonna give this a 5 stars. This is like really, really good. It's auto included if you play elementals, and it might even be played in all the other decks. Like Aggro Shaman might even play this because it restores 3 health and it's really good in the mirror match. Tidal Surge is a deal 4 damage to a minion, and it restores 4 health to your hero. So it's kind of like a holy fire that you can only target minions with. It does not go phase, and because it does not go phase, it's not as good as Jade Lightning. If you want to restore health to your own hero, might I recommend the last card we just rated, which is the Hot Spring Elemental. So yeah, I don't think Tidal Surge is going to be that good. 1 mana card. 1 mana card! 1 star card! Ah! Fire Plume Harbinger is a 2 mana 1/1 that reduces the cost of all elementals in your hand by 1. This effect is easier to trigger in Constructed than Arena for sure, because you're building a whole deck of elementals. So effectively, you are gonna get these reductions as well, right? Not as good as Mech Warper for sure, because Mech Warper was a 2 mana 2/3. It does tempo your opponent out because it's still a good card and it keeps on going. This is like a fair Mech Warper, and the fair Mech Warper is not that good because it doesn't even reduce the cost of your future elementals, right? You have to actually be holding elementals as well. So yeah, I'm not too big on this card. I don't think this card is too insane. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this guy 2 stars. Primal Fin Totem looks like a Primal Fin Murloc. Look at that, 2 mana 0/3 with at the end of your turn summon a 1/1 Murloc. Now this is the freaking slow as hell, right? For 2 mana, you get 2 1/1s if it survives a turn, and it's probably not gonna survive past 10. It's also a 0/3, so it's really bad in combat. It just sits there and does nothing, and if your opponent plays a 3/2, well, this is just a deck card in your hand. So I think even if you're playing the Murloc deck with you know, Unite the Murlocs, you're not gonna want this. This is just too slow. Murloc decks have to go fast, and well, you're not playing a 2 mana 0/3 in my book. It has to do something significant, like Mana Tide or Flame Tongue, right? So this is a very easy 0 star. Next we have a Volcano for 5 mana. You deal 15 damage, split amongst all minions, not just enemy minions, and it overloads you for 2 as well. So Volcano is really good because you know, it effectively is a flame strike, or it's an elemental destruction, however you want to view it. And yeah, hopefully you're playing this in a control shaman, because you do not want to deal damage to your own minions. The reason that you want to play this in mid-range as well is because you think that, oh, I'm gonna lose my board sometime, so I want to deal 15 damage to minions that way, and then maybe I can come back from that. Well, I'd argue that it's actually really bad if you're playing mid-range shaman, because if you're playing against a control deck, they don't really care if you volcano their minions, right? They just play more stuff, and you're probably not gonna outvalue them. So Volcano is kind of like you know, it's like kind of like a rock stuck in a hard place here. It's like a volcano stuck in the hard jungle, more like. So I'm not really big on this card. I think this is just a 2-star card. Spirit Echo is a 3 mana card with give your minions Death Rattle, return this to your hand. So very similar to Echo of Medivh, but it's a little bit slower in the fact that you do need your minions to die, and you, it is a buff, so at least there's that, right? So your opponent, you know, is not incentivized to trade with your minions. And you effectively give all your minions some kind of evasion, I guess. Very hard to decide what you want to cast this on, you get what I mean? If you want to cast this on Murlocs, then why? Are you playing a 3 mana card that doesn't deal damage to your opponent's face? If you're playing this in you know, more of a control deck, then you know, you might as well just be playing extra bomb, for example. So I don't think this is a good card. I don't think this is gonna see play, and if it sees play, then you're probably gonna win the game because this is a bad card. 0 stars. Stone Sentinel is what people are calling Dr. 7 now, because it's a 7 mana 4/4 with Battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, summon 2/3 elementals with taunt. So you're effectively casting Feral Spirits for free. If you cast an elemental last turn. So the elemental deck seems pretty strong right now because there seems to have a lot of support with that. And yeah, you might actually get some crazy shenanigans happen, because if you do actually make this work, it's a 7 mana 8/10, and 7 mana 8/10s are nothing to scoff at. Very weak against you know, AoEs, so stuff like, you know, Abyssal Enforcer, Dragonfire Potion, I think Flame Strike, for example. Like, it's pretty bad against that, but it is really good against those mid-range decks, such as mid-range Hunter, your Face Warriors. It just put a lot of pressure on the board, right? So I'm a big fan of this card, and I think Elemental Shamans will want to play this card. I don't think the triggering the effect is too hard, so I would give this 4 stars. Finally, we have the big Elemental Daddy himself. It is Kalimos, Primal Lord. With Battlecry, if you played an Elemental last turn, you cast an Elemental Invocation, which is you actually get to choose between Onyxia mode, fill your board with 1/1s. You get to choose between deal 3 damage to all enemy minions, so one-sided Abyssal Enforcer. We have deal 6 damage to the enemy face, so Smork, like basically Leroy, and you get to restore 12 health to your hero, so basically Reno, right? Restore 12 health is basically Reno. So the fact that all of these effects are versatile and you can pick the best one for that specific matchup makes this card really, really good. And on top of that, it's an 8 mana 7/7, so the body is not that far off from being really bad. It's just that the versatility is so good, right? Back in Vanilla Hearthstone, all of the Druid cards that choose one were played because, you know, you just have to adapt to the situation. And this being an expansion with adapt being such a major theme, Kalimos is going to be a great card. So it gets 5 stars. Onwards to Azal Warlocks. We have Lakari Sacrifice being the Warlock quest card. The quest, what do you do? Discard 6 cards. It seems pretty easy when you to discard 6 cards, honestly, right? What is the reward though? The reward is Nether Portal. So the Nether Portal, you summon a permanent portal that is not interactable, and every turn it summons 3/2 imps. So the portal actually says at the end of a turn, summon 2 3/2 imps on each side of it. Okay, so that's how the portal works. And yeah, that's a really good quest. Why? Because this is actually just a good win condition. If your opponent is playing any form of minion based deck, they can't win the game because you get 3/2s every single turn. So as long as you maintain board parity, you just win the game. Like, you just cannot lose the game. So yeah, that's a very legit win condition. The problem is that if you're dealing with something like a combo deck, such as the classic Freeze Mage or J Golems or something like that, you might not be able to beat that because their things scale along with them. But if you're playing a deck that does not scale, such as like Paladin or Priest or Hunter, for example, like that, you could actually outvalue your opponent with these unlimited 3/2s. And discarding 6 cards is not that hard. So I'm going to give this quest 5 stars. I think this is a very good quest. Speaking of cards that can enable you to discard easier, we've got Lakari Fellhound, which is a new Warlock minion, 4 mana 3/8 demon with Taunt, and Battlecry, discard 2 random cards. So it helps you, trigger your quest a little bit better. It's kind of like a different Doomguard, although Doomguard is still better because Doomguard is just more proactive. A 5/7 charge is much better than a 3/8 taunt, right? 3/8 taunts are good because it buys you time. This is also a very aggressive card. It looks really defensive because it's 8 health and taunt, but it actually protects your stronger minions from dying, such as Darkshire Councilman, such as Flame Imp. Those cards get protected by a 3/8 taunt. So this is actually a very aggressive card, and it is really, really good. Also, ups the value of stuff like Silverware Golem, ups the value of Malkazar's Imp, because those cards can be triggered more consistently. So this is a great card. You actually want this in your discard Disco Zoo, I guess. So I would give this 4 stars. Next, we have Ravenous Pterodax. For 4 mana, you get a 4/4 beast that you have to destroy a friendly minion if you have one, and you get to adapt twice. So how good is this effect in Constructed? Well, I argue that this effect is not that good in Constructed because, Void Terror is not really that special, honestly. Void Terror was played in the old Zoo decks when Power Overwhelming was still a thing. Well, Power Overwhelming is no longer a thing, right? So the best target for this would be something like like a Villager, right? Possessed Villager or something like that, and make this really, really big. But the fact that, you can actually do more stuff at turn 4. There are better 4-drops out there. Even Crystal Reaver might even be a better 4-drop with all these new demons coming in. And the fact that you actually have to destroy a friendly minion. So if your opponent knows you're playing this sort of deck, they're just gonna kill your weakest minions first, right? So it's a little awkward. And the downside, like the floor of this minion is a 4 mana 4/4, and I do not want to play a 4 mana 4/4. So I'm gonna make this card just a 1 star. Alright, next card we have the Tarlorca. For 5 mana, you get a 1/7 taunt with, has +3 attack during your opponent's turn. So this is the new Tar cycle where it has only, these all Tar creatures only have 1 attack during your opponent's turn. So it's a more defensive minion, right? 5 mana 1/7 is actually not bad in constructed, because a 5 mana 4/7 your opponent's turn buys you a lot of time. And if it's a card that wants to buy you a lot of time, you know what class wants that? Hand locks, right? Hand locks, Kazakus, Reno locks, you know, stuff like that. Of course, Reno's rotating out, but now you actually have access to a big Sludge Belcher, and this would be a card that buys you time to get to your late game stuff. So this is a very good contender for being a good card in those grindier Warlock decks. 4 stars. Corrupting Mist is a very weird Doomsayer because it corrupts every single minion, basically, and then just destroy them at the start of next turn. It's effectively casting corruption in each minion on the board. I argue that Doomsayer might even be a better version of this because Doomsayer prevents your opponents from playing new minions if they can't kill the Doomsayer. Corrupting Mist, when you play this, your opponent can just play more stuff. So this is a worse Doomsayer, but at least it's another option for AoE. This is really good if you're playing against an aggro deck, right? Say like your opponent drops 1 drop into 1 drop and then 2 drop, and then you play Corrupting Mist. So you take a bit of damage and then you just blow their board up, right? So it's kind of like a cheaper Hellfire in that case because you're still doing damage to yourself. So yeah, I think there are still better options. And if you want to play the second or the third or the fourth copy of your AoEs, that's like probably the worst one that you can put this in. But I'm not really too crazy about this card. So it's a 2 star because it's a flavor card. Feeding Time! 5 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion and summon 3 1/1s. So we knew that Implosion was OP, so Blizzard go ahead and fix Implosion and made it 1 extra mana and always has the middle ground with deal 3 damage and summon 3 1/1s. The fact that this does not go phase is a big problem because, well, it makes it less versatile. It does not make you win the game. And 3 1/1s is, well, it's good in Zoo, right? Because you kind of want to play a lot of small minions and actually buff the small minions. But with Power Overwhelming rotating out and the fact that this does not have, you know, a super crazy ceiling element to it, makes this basically unplayable. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 0 stars. Crow Dinomancer, for 6 mana you get a 5/5 with Death Rattle. Summon a random minion you discarded this game. So if you discarded something like Doomguard, wow, then you actually get a lot of value because for a 6 mana 5/5 it Death Rattles into a 5/7, which is, you can PogChamp all over that, right? But it is a Death Rattle because and that's really, really bad, right? Because your opponent can actually deal with that really well. You have to wait till it happens, and also you don't control what you discard, honestly, right? So yeah, I'm not really too big on this card. I'd say this is a 0. I don't think you even want to play this in Disco Zoo. Next we have Blood Bloom. 2 mana, your next spell this turn costs health instead of mana. So at first glance this seems really bad because you don't want to, you know, turn to Twisting Nether or turn to Doom your opponent. Like, just want to Pyroblast yourself for some reason? No. There are some very interesting stuff with this though, because at the cost of life, you get to play a Super Innervate. We know Innervate is an insane card, but this Innervate only works on Warlock spells, right? So what spells do you want to Innervate out? Well, Siphon Soul comes to mind, you know, Board Clears come into mind, you know, Bane of Doom, Karakazam that can summon a lot of minions and stuff like that. You know, those are actually not bad. So you actually have to play a spell that costs more than 4 for this to be a better Innervate, because who really cares if you know, you take damage, right? Technically speaking. So Blood Bloom could have potential, but at the same time, you know, it doesn't really fit in our decks with you know, Hand Lock and Zoo Lock and stuff like that, and Disco Lock, and yeah, just does not really make sense, at least, right? So we're gonna go ahead and give this a 1 star. Alright, next card we have Chittering Tunneler. It's a 3 mana 3/3 with battle card discover a Warlock spell, effectively. And it also deals damage to your hero equal to its cost. Unfortunately, Warlock spells are usually, you know, on the high end of things. There are some really cheap spells like Coil and Soulfire and whatnot, and that's pretty good, right? It's a 3 mana 3/3 draw, it's a Soulfire or Coil, that's really good. Unfortunately, if you get a choice between all the high-end stuff, then you can't really do anything with it. And there's also a lot of situational cards in Warlock as well, such as Sacrificial Pack, Dark Bargain, Drain Life, something that you don't really want. It does discover a spell though, it's a little bit more versatile, but it deals damage to yourself, and I'm not really big on this card, so I would say this is a 1-star card. Finally, we have Clutchmother Zavas. It is a 2-mana 2/2 with, whenever you discard this, you do not discard this, and then you give it +2/+2 and return it to your hand. Now, if this is not a stupid card, I don't know what is, because Disco Zoo is going to be insane, and if you discard this, then not only did you not discard a card, you actually return this to your hand and make it bigger, so you make a 2-mana 4/4, and then you make a 2-mana 6/6, and so on. Hey, what about if you have Malchosaurus Imp? Well, not only do you not discard a card, you actually get to draw a card. So are you saying that so far it actually says deal 4 damage, draw a card? Yeah, this card is pretty stupid. The floor is really bad of this card, because if you top deck this later with no discard, unless it's a 2-mana 2/2, but who cares? If you're playing Disco Zoo, you want to make the most broken turns as you can, right? And Clutch Mother is going to make you do some broken stuff. Like 2-mana 6/6s are not out of the question either. So this is an easy 5-star. Alright, and finally, the last class of them all is Wardia. We have Fire Plume's Heart. Because Ragnaros is rotating out, we need to remember him for his deeds and for his heroicness, of course. With this quest, play 7 taunt minions, and you get Sulfuras. And Sulfuras is a weapon that says, Battlecry, your hero power is not armor up anymore, so no longer are we Resident Sleeper, but we're gonna smork, because we're gonna deal 8 damage to a random enemy. You also get a 3-mana 4/2 weapon, which is not too bad either. So that's pretty cool. So how good is this quest? Well, playing top minions does not seem like it's insanely hard. There's so many top minions in the game to choose from, and this is actually a legit win condition. It's really hard to beat a warrior that has a 2-mana hero power that deals 8 damage to a random enemy, right? Like, it's just a countdown. And you're not gonna win the value game as soon as Fire Plume's Heart is coming. So I can see a taunt Fire Plume's Heart quest warrior being played, and Sulfuras is also a 3-mana 4/2. You do not want to shoot a bad minion, then go ahead and just hit it with the Sulfuras, right? So yeah, this can get actually pretty crazy. So I would rate this quest really highly. I would rate this a 5-star card. I think if you're gonna be a control warrior, then this is going to be what makes control warrior come back. Speaking of control warrior, can I actually interest you in a 1-mana gain 5 armor? Oh, no? Cards that just heal you and don't do anything on the board or draw your card is really bad? Huh, I wouldn't have guessed. Negative 1-star. Ordinary Direhorn is a 6-mana 5/5 taunt of Battlecry Adapt. So you get to choose a bonus, and you get to apply it to this. And yeah, this is actually pretty reasonable. Dark Arakoa was also played in non-Cthulhu decks because the body was so good, and this could actually be better than the Arakoa. Sometimes you want more, sometimes you want a Divine Shield on this, right? Sometimes you want more health, sometimes you just 6-mana 6/6 taunt is not unreasonable as well. So this will see play in the taunt deck that warriors are going to be brewing here. So this card is a 3-star card. You actually want to consider to put in this deck if you want to play 7 taunt minions. Alright, next up we have a Tata Lord. It's a 7-mana 1/11, which is a 7-mana 5/11 in your opponent's turn. So it's just slightly better than the Ancient of War on your opponent's turn, and on your turn is really bad because, what are you gonna do with 1 attack, right? So it's just super slow, and you just probably gonna play a control warrior because of this. Once again, if you play this against something like an aggro deck, it's really, really good because they need to get through 11 health before they hit your face, and we know how good Ancient of War is against aggro decks. So yeah, this does have a place, and you might also want to consider this. There are a lot of options though for taunt minions as well. So this would be a 3-star card as well. Molten Blade is a 1-mana 1/1 weapon with each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a different weapon. So it's kind of like the Shift the Zerus in weapon form, right? How good is this? Well, it's a little awkward. Because you don't get to choose the weapon, and sometimes you don't want to play a weapon in the turn you want to. You actually want consistency in constructed, and this is a little bit too random for me. Of course, there are some silly stuff you can do. You can buff this up, and then you can make like a 5/4 weapon or something crazy, but that's just a dream. The ceiling is really high. the floor is more realistic and the floor is really low. So I would just give this card a 0 star. Cornered Sentry, 2 mana 2/6, taunt, Battlecry, summon a 3/1/1 Raptors for your opponent. So this is really good if you can actually deal with the Raptors for some way. You can actually combo this with MC Tech as well. You can combo this with Ravaging Ghoul. You can combo this with Whirlwind effects. You know, it's just the body is good if you can deal with the Raptors. If you can't deal with the Raptors, well, it's still a 2/3 taunt, so it's not the worst of options. So yeah, if you can actually help this out, then good. If you can't help this out, then it's just fine. So overall, 3-star card. Dragonhorn Hatchling, oh, it's so cute. It's a 5 mana 3/6 with taunt. And with Death Rattle, if you want to kill this thing, then Mommy comes. And Mommy is a 5 mana 6/9 taunt as well. So it's a very good, it's a Fen Creeper. So on face value, it's actually really bad. You do not want to be playing Fen Creepers in Constructed. So the fact that you actually treasure the Death Rattle more makes you want to play this card a little bit more, right? So how good is a 5 mana 6/9 taunt that is in your deck that you can't really play immediately? Well, I argue that that's actually reasonable. Yeah, 5 mana 6/9 is kind of like Ancient of War, and you do sometimes want to shuffle an Ancient of War into your deck, and you are playing taunt, so you are actually getting across to your quest. What's preventing this from being a 4-star card is because it is a 3/6 taunt at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, it's just a Fen Creeper. Your opponent doesn't need to deal with Mommy for a while. So yeah, 3 stars. Explore on GORO, 2 mana spell card. Replace your deck of copies of Discover a card. So 1 mana spell, Discover a card, is gonna be all you're gonna draw for the rest of the game. No, Constructed is not about RNG. RNG decks are usually really bad because Renounced Darkness is really bad and you're not gonna want this. So it's a very solid 0 star. Sudden Genesis is a 5 mana warrior card that says summon copies of your damaged minions. Do note that it does not work with the quest because the quest says play 7 taunt minions, so you can't actually Sudden Genesis some taunt minions and expect to get the quest done that way. There are some interesting combos that you can deal with this deal with this card, such as, you know, Enraged Chargers. So if you have a Grom that survived, and then you can Sudden Genesis with some other cards, that's really sweet. So yeah, I mean, effects like these are always relevant. You know, summoning copies directly onto the board is really, really strong. And not even 1/1 copies as well. So I rate this card okay. I think it's really hard to make this card work still. But of course, there's potential, right? How could it have not potential? 2-star card. And finally, we have King Mosh. It's a 9 mana 9/7 that destroys all damaged minions. My question is, why is this better than a Brawl, right? Okay, sure, you can Whirlwind and then play this and then clear off your opponent's board, leaving a 9/7 behind. But Brawl is a cheaper alternative that is a little bit more versatile because King Mosh is, at the end of the day, a 9 mana card that you need to combo with something else, okay? You don't need to call Whirlwind if you can do some minion trading, but you do need to make this card work. And sometimes you do not want to jump through hoops and hurdles to make this card work. It's just not efficient enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this card a 1 star, just not the legendary you're looking for. Alright, onwards to our neutral card. Let's see if we have any cool neutral cards. We have a 1 mana 2/1 Emerald Reaver. That is a beast and that deals 1 damage to each hero. Wow. So this is going in your super aggressive Smork deck, because think of it as like a Stone Touch Spore. That's a 1 mana 2/1, right? Like, would you put a Stone Touch Spore in your deck? Probably not. So I'm guessing this is still pretty bad. So I don't think you want to even play, like, if Hunters did not get a single new 1-drop, then this might be good. But Hunters got some insane 1-drops, right? So I don't think this is good. 0 stars. Yay! It's a Firefly! It's a 1 mana 1/2 Battlecry. Add a 1/2 elemental to your hand. And you can actually play this 1 mana 1/2 elemental for some elemental synergies or something like that. But other than that, why the hell are you playing a 1 mana 1/2 that adds a 1 mana 1/2 to your hand? 0 stars. Glacial Shard is a 1 mana 2/1 that Battlecry freezes an enemy. Now this has a little bit more hope because the Battlecry is actually pretty reasonable if you want to, you know, just race down your opponent and freeze them up. You know, the counter to taunts and heals are freeze your opponent's enemies so they can't actually trade off your minions. So I think this is a pretty cool card. It does have a place somewhere, I believe. I'll give it a 2 stars. Next up, we have the Ravasaur Runt. For 2 mana 2/2 beast, you get to Battlecry adapt if you control 2 other minions. So it is actually really good if you can adapt a 2 mana 2/2. Like, that's actually super sick. It does synergize a lot with, you know, cards that can play 1 mana 1/1s, or they can play like 1 mana 2/1/1s like Alley Cat and Lost in the Jungle, you know, just more 1 mana 1/1s. You can actually take effect of this. But the fact that, you know, there are better 2-drops out there, such as 2 mana 3/2s that, you know, just get extra effect, like Adapt the Beast or something like that, makes this a little bit you know, lower on the scale of good stuff. So I would go ahead and say that this is a 3-star card. I think the hyper aggressive zoo decks and the aggro decks might play this, but they would also compare this to other cards that perhaps are a bit more stable in what they do. So yeah, I think 3 stars is where we're gonna stand. Whirlpool Hunter, 2 mana 2/3, Battlecry. Give a friendly Murloc +1/+1. Now, this looks like it's really bad at first glance, but if you actually get to activate this on the Murloc, it's a 2 mana 3/4. And 2 mana 3/4s are exactly what you want. Now, this might even get better because War Leaders are 3/3s, right? So War Leaders usually die really easily. If you buff a War Leader to a 4/4, it gets a little bit better. So yeah, this can get a little bit better in the Murloc decks, in the fact that it actually is super aggressive. The fact, unfortunately, is that Murlocs are usually pretty undercosted in their effect, so they're usually not as good. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this card a 3 stars. Stubborn Gastropod looks really good because it's a 2 mana 1/2 that kills anything. It also stops things from hitting you. Unfortunately, we are living in the constructed meta where weapons are everywhere. Spells are everywhere. You do not want to get this Potion of Madness or something like that. It's just a 1/2. It's like, what the heck are you doing with your life if you're playing a 2 mana 1/2 with taunt? It does I mean, I get that it's poisonous, but it gets removed in so many ways with deal damage and stuff like that. So no, don't see this happening. 1 star. Next card, we have the Volatile Elemental with 2 mana 1/1. Death Rattle. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy minion. So this is good because it always deals damage to an enemy minion, so it doesn't go face. And sometimes you just really want things to go to deal with enemy minions, right? Unfortunately, this is a freaking 2 mana 1/1. Your opponent can play around this really well as well. And when you're playing 2 mana 1/1s, you know you are not having a good time, okay? Does have Death Rattle, so maybe it will be found in some priest decks if you're, you know, high or drunk or something like that, because this is a 0-star card. Next up, we have Ignapper. It's a 3 mana 3/1 that when it dies, it summons 2 1/1s. So it's reasonable. I mean, you know, it is a very sticky minion. It does reward classes that can take advantage of this Death Rattle quite a bit because it does leave behind 2 bodies on the board, right? You can buff it up, you can buff the 1/1 bodies, you can trigger the dinosaur if you have at least 2 other minions types of effects. So yeah, this could be found somewhere. And if your opponent doesn't deal with this, well, you can also just trade upwards, right? 3 mana 3/1s trade really, really well upwards, and it also goes face really well. But other than that, nah, not really that good. So I'm gonna go ahead and rate this 2 stars. Giant Wasp, 3 mana 2/2 with Stealth and Poisonous. Pretty good card for decks that don't really have a lot of, you know, kill something potential. So the first thing is Priest, right? Where Priest actually, you know, it's really hard for a Priest to remove stuff. And having Stealth and Poisonous minion is actually better than you think, because it's a card that if it gets dealt with, such as Consecration or whatnot, then your opponent traded the card with this, right? And if your opponent doesn't deal with it, well, then you can just play it whenever you want. You can hit it whenever you want. So I think this card actually has a lot of potential, especially in, you know, the decks that actually need this card. You know, I wouldn't even be sad playing this in handlock, right? You play this on turn 3 and you forget about it. If your opponent deals with it, sure. If your opponent doesn't deal with it, then it's fine. So I'm actually gonna give this guy 4 stars. Wow, this is the best neutral card so far, right? Igneous Elemental is a 3 mana 2/3 with Death Rattle. Add 2 1/2 elementals to your hand. So come to think of it, you could actually use all of these elementals as a rogue, so you can actually play these elementals as your quadruple you know, minion requirement to trigger Crystal Core. But outside of that, I mean, how the hell are you playing a 3 mana 2/3 that adds 2 1 mana 1/2s to your hand? You do not want to do that. So outside of the Crystal Core deck, this is a 0. Primal Fin Lookout, 3 mana 3/2. If you control another Murloc, you get to discover a Murloc. When you're playing Murlocs, you do not want to draw Murlocs. You just want to kill your opponents. You want to, just group up your board and whatnot. Like, card draw is not really that important in Murloc decks, right? If you want card draw, then play actual card draw, and you can also play weapons and just bash your opponent's face in. This card is actually not that good in Murloc decks. You do not need more reach, or you do not need more stuff when you play a Murloc deck. So this is just a 1-star card. Pterodactyl Hatchling is a 3-mana 2/2 with Battle Cry Adapt. You can do better than this in Constructed. There are so many more things you can do. A 3-mana mini bot, a 3-mana 2/5, a 3-mana 5/2, yada yada yada. This is not happening. 0 stars. You're not having this in your Constructed decks. Tar Creeper is interesting. It's a 3-mana Ascension Shieldmaster on your opponent's turn, and on your turn it's a 3-mana 1/5 that's just a Durly creature. I can see this be played in very control-oriented decks, because at the end of the day, you do want to play 3-mana 3/5s, and so this might be found in deck. There might be better 3-mana cards that are considered in control decks, but this is a good option. So I'd say this is 3 stars. It's not bad. Next up, we have a Thunder Lizard, 3-mana 3/3 Battle Cry. If you played an Elemental last turn, you get to adapt, which is pretty cool, right? That is actually not bad. If you have an Elemental deck, you kind of want to go like, wow, what other Elemental payoffs do I have? Well, it turns out that a 3-mana 3/3 adapt is pretty damn good. A 3-mana 3/6, a 3-mana 4/4, yeah, that's playing above the curve. So if you're playing an Elemental deck, you do want to consider some more payoff mechanics. I personally think that there are better payoff mechanics to come. This is one of the worst ones, but still not bad. So I would give this a 3 stars. Fire Plume Phoenix is a 4-mana 3/3 that deals 2 damage and is an elemental. And I'm not really excited to play this in a constructed deck, because it's just too fair a card, right? Stormpike Commando is never an insane card, and this kind of like a Stormpike Commando that costs less, which is really good. But you have to play some more valuable cards, such as SI7 Agent, or just something that is a little bit faster for the effect. So I don't think Fire Plume Phoenix will be played. I'm gonna rate this card a 1 star. Stegodon is a 4-mana 2/6 of Taunt. Talk about filler cards. Filler cards are great. Filler cards are awesome. And yeah, filler card. 0 star. We've got 5-mana Nesting Rock. It's a 4/7. Now this is interesting, right? As a battle cry, if you control at least 2 other minions against taunts. Now a 5-mana 4/7 taunt is exactly what you want to play, and that is just the worst case situation. The best case situation. Worst case situation, it's a 5-mana 4/7 beast. That's actually pretty good. I don't think it's insanely hard to trigger this effect of 2 other minions, and I think this card is actually going to see a little bit of play when you're playing like a mid-range hunter or whatnot, right? Like, we know that mid-range hunters don't have a lot of 5-drops and whatnot, and there are some decks that actually might want to take advantage of this. It's really hard to trigger this, because without taunt, it's just a dirty 4/7, so it's kind of like your Ginny or Zephyrs that you don't buffer or not. But I mean, this still has a place somewhere, so let's go ahead and rate this 3 stars. Sabertooth Smorker is a 6-mana 8/2 with Stealth. You're not playing this, you don't want this, 0 stars. Sated Thrashadon is a 7-mana 5/7 with Death Rattle. Summon 3 1/1 Murlocs. Now, this is just not what you want as a 7-mana card. I mean, it's just summoning 3 1/1 Murlocs. I mean, this is kind of a Q bonus. So yeah, I would just rate this card a 0 stars. Unfortunately, it is Trashadon. Stormwatcher is a 7-mana 4/8 Wind Fury Elemental. It does have a lot of health, so that's good, but otherwise it doesn't synergize with what you want to do in Constructed. In Constructed, you want to do broken stuff. A 7-mana 4/8 Wind Fury is very fair, and it's not broken enough. So let's go ahead and rate this 0 stars. Giant Mastodon is a 0 stars. Ultrasaur is a 10-mana 7/14. That's a vanilla card. I did tweet to the developers and the community managers before about this, so let's go ahead and show this tweet here. I asked Rob, hey Rob, if you can help it, please convince the devs to not put any more vanilla cards in the next sets. And then Benbro says, Amaz, let's chat about it the next time I see you. Unfortunately, guys, I did not get to meet Benbro in this expansion, so this is my fault, guys. Ultrasaur's in the game. Sorry, it's a negative 1 star. Alright, next card we have Galaka Crawler. Everybody seems to be super hyped up this card because it is a tech card against pirates. 2 mana 2/3 beast with destroy a pirate and gain +1/+1. My argument is that this is exactly like a Acidic Swamp Boost and that this will see no play at all. Well, I mean, if you see this, then you're probably very happy because you know you're gonna win the game. So this card is not good because it's so specific, okay? It only works against one deck in the whole universe. Okay, sure, it works against patches with rogues and shamans and whatnot, but you really only want to play this against a pirate warrior. So you do not want this because it's a 2 mana 2/3 that doesn't do anything. You cannot hurt your own deck just to beat those specific matchups. And yeah, I argue that the oozes are actually really bad as well because you might not even draw this when you need it, right? So yeah, I'd say this is a bad card and you do not want to play this. And if you do play this, then good luck because you're gonna figure out sooner or later that these tech cards are just not good enough. You know, I actually want this would be better if it's a 2 mana 3/3 Battlecry destroy a pirate and itself. It would be better if it is the other opposite way. You get what I mean? This being a 2 mana 2/3 is not what you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that this card is bad. I'm actually go ahead and rate this 0 stars. 0 stars. Devilsaur Egg is a 3 mana 0/3 with Death Rattle. Summon a 5/5 Devilsaur. So it's the new Nerubian Egg that is a little bit more expensive. So is this good? Well, I mean, Power Overwhelming is rotating out. So you will have to combo this with something. So for example, the Pterodax from Warlock would be a card that you can combo with. You can also give this attack and then make a 5/5 because a 3 mana 5/5, God knows, that is a really good card. We knew that Nerubian Egg is one of the best cards in Naxxramas, right? So Devilsaur Egg is going to be played. So yeah, that's gonna be a thing. So I'm gonna rate Devilsaur Egg pretty highly. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 4-star card, but then you do need to find some way to make this work. Alright, Humongous Razor Leaf is a 3 mana 4/8 with Can't Attack. It is the new big brother of Ancient Watcher, and it's gonna join him, Ancient Watcher that is, in a new 0-star category. You do not want to play that. If you want to play some Shadow Flame shenanigans, then just stick with Ancient Watcher. Stonehill Defender is a 3 mana 1/4 taunt. Battlecry, discover a taunt minion. Well, that's actually pretty insane given that Silverback Patriarch is just a 3 mana 1/4, right? This one, actually, you get to draw a card and discover a taunt. Like, that is like pretty sweet. Unfortunately, you're still playing a 3 mana 1/4 taunt, and that's not really what you want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this 1 star. It is pretty good in some Dirtly decks though. Vicious Fledgling is a 3 mana 3/3 with after this minion attacks, you get to adapt. Now, obviously the dream is to attack your opponent's face with this and get Wind Fury, and then attack your opponent's face again, and then adapt again. So you get a double adapt every time starting from turn 1. So that's really the sweetness. Unfortunately, it is a 3/3, so it gets really awkward. But if you do get to trigger the 1 attack, it's really, really good. So I'm going to go ahead and say 2 stars. Toneveer's Stone Shaper is one of those big payoff cards if you're playing elementals because it's a 4 mana 3/5 that gains Taunt and Divine Shield if you play an elemental last turn. Now this is a much better payoff card than the Lizard, the 3 mana 3/3 Lizard that adapts if you play an elemental last turn because Taunt and Divine Shield is insane. I mean, for God's sake, you're making a Sunwalker that's happening on turn 4. Like, your opponent's really gonna beat that. I'm gonna be pretty scared about Curve Stone because if you just curve Elemental into this and then Elemental into 6 into Doctor 7 Elemental into Kalimos, that's gonna be a pretty hard curve to beat. But yeah, this card is really good. I expect it to be played in Elemental decks, and you do want to consider this as an Elemental package. So 4 stars. Servant of Kalimos is a 5 mana 4/5 that if you played an elemental last turn, you get to discover an elemental. Now this one is a little bit weaker because a 5 mana 4/5 draw card is good, but elementals you still need a win condition and you still want to draw your deck and such, right? So I'm gonna rate this exactly like I rated Gorilla Bot for Constructed, 2-star card. Frozen Crusher is a 6 mana 8/8 with, after this minion attacks, you freeze this minion. So it only gets to attack every other turn. There are more broken things you can do in Constructed. I mean, a 6 mana 8/8 that has reverse Wind Fury is not exactly what I want to play. So I don't really see this card being played that much. You know, there's just better options out there. So I'll go ahead and give this a 1 star. Volcanosaur is a 7 mana 5/6 battle cry, adapt, and then adapt again. Yeah, once again, this is just like an arena card. I don't really see this being played in constructed because, well, it's a little random, and you know, there are better things you want to do at 7, right? 7 is a very important number. You want to do some broken stuff at 7, not play a minion. So yeah, let's go ahead and rate this as 0 stars. Alright, onwards to our epics. We have 1 mana 2/3 Emerald Hive Queen. This is really good in decks that run not a lot of minions, and if you're actually a bit smarter with this, then you can actually, you know, play this along with a 2-drop. So such like 2-drop plus 1-drop would be really good with Emerald Hive Queen. Does fight aggro really well, and yeah, once again, synergizes spells really well. Other than that, it's really awkward to play this in other decks that are not spell heavy. So let's go ahead and give this 3 stars. Gluttonous Ooze is a 3-mana 3/3 ooze battlecry. Destroy your opponent's weapon and then gain armor equal to its attack. Now, I'm going to argue that this is even a worse version of Acidic Swamp Boost, because for 1 extra mana, you only get 1 extra health and some armor if it works, right? Cards that are reactive and destroys your opponent game plans, they need to actually be very low costed. So this is basically a bad Acidic Swamp Boost. 0 stars, unplayable. Bright-Eyed Scout. Now, this is more interesting epic because it's a 4 mana 3/4 that draws a card and you get to change its cost to 5. Now, that is pretty exciting because you actually might be able to make a deck where you actually have a lot of high costing cards and then change its cost to 5, and that's insane, right? What if you draw a card that's actually like a 0 mana or 2 mana, like an Innervate or something like that? Well, you wouldn't have drawn that card otherwise, right? So you're still playing a 4 mana 3/4 that draws a card. So I'd argue that this is one of the better cards in expansion, and it's really, really good in control decks where you actually want a card draw. And sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you actually get to, you know, innovate something like Free from Amber from Priest really, really fast, and you get rewarded. So yeah, I'm gonna rate this card really highly. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a 4-star card. Gentle Megasaur is a 4 mana 5/4 with battlecry, adapt your Murlocs. Now, this is actually not that bad because, you know, we know that the Spore card from Druid is a 4 mana adapt your Murlocs. Unfortunately, if you play this in a Murloc deck, this is not a Murloc itself. I mean, sure, it's like a Murloc Lord, and if your Murlocs actually stick on the board, you actually get to push the advantage. It is kind of like a Windmore card, but Windmore cards are fine if you're playing an all-in deck with Murlocs anyways, right? So I think this is alright. I think you might actually consider this maybe a 1 of or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this 3 stars. Playable. Bitter Tide Hydra is a 5 mana 8/8. Oh my god! Whenever this minion takes damage, it deals 3 damage to your hero. Now, I'd argue that this drawback is actually not that bad. I mean, sure, you're playing a 5 mana 8/8 Pit Lord, kind of, right? If you just look at it that way, 5 mana 8/8 deal 6 damage to yourself or deal 9 damage to yourself or whatnot. But if you're playing an aggro deck, who cares, right? Your opponent actually has a trade against this, and then it deals damage to you. No, this 5 mana 8/8 is a great curve topper in aggro decks, and you just smash your opponent's face in, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and give this 4 stars. I think aggro decks would really want this. Blaze Caller is a 7 mana 6/6 with battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, you deal 5 damage. Now this is a pretty good text because effectively you're playing Firelands Portal in any class with elementals, right? So this is actually better than Firelands Portal because you actually might get a better 5-drop. A 5-drop is not a 6/6. This is a 6/6, right? So yeah, this is going to be pretty insane in those elemental decks. A pretty good win condition, honestly, by itself. And triggering elementals does not seem that hard to do in Constructed right now. So let's go ahead and rate this card a 4 stars. Charged Devilsaur is an 8 mana 7/7 with charge, but it cannot attack heroes this turn. So it cannot attack heroes as in go face the turn you play it. So that actually does kind of make it a little bit weirder. I mean, sure, an 8 mana 7/7 that charges and trades for something is really good. If it leaves behind a body, it's even better. But, you know, once again, in Constructed, you have to do more broken stuff at 8 mana. So this is not really playable, especially because it does not go face. We're gonna go ahead and give this guy a 1 star. Primordial Drake, the Lone Dragon in GORO, is 8 mana 4/8 with Taunt. Battlecry, it deals 2 damage to all other minions. So it's kind of like a small smaller Abyssal Enforcer doesn't hit both heroes, which is probably better because you don't want to hit your own face in these type of effects, and it does have taunt on top of it. So Dragon Priest might actually consider this because AoEs are just good, and it's another dragon. So many dragons are being rotated out, but it is really expensive at 8 mana card, right? So let's go ahead and rate this a 2 stars. Tortolan Primalist, 8 mana 5/4 with discover a spell and cast it with random targets. Now, this is better if you discover a secret, if you discover something card draw, and doesn't have any targeting mechanics. Because if you have a random target, then God bless you. Good luck, right? So this is better in some classes than others. Decks that draw a lot of cards and decks have strictly better cards for itself, with something be like Druid, right? Druid's swipe always goes opponent's minions, goes opponent's face. You get Innervate, you get Nourish, you got Bite. All of these effects are good for you, right? But then it wouldn't be good in something that's like Paladin, for example, because Paladin has a lot of targets. Something gets a buff, so you don't want to buff your opponent's minions. So yeah, I'd say this is just not really that played and constructed. It's 8 mana as well. 8 mana, you want to do something better. So 1 star. Onwards to our legendaries. Now, these are some pretty cool legendaries. We got Spirit Singer Umbra. It's a 4 mana 3/4. It looks like a Murloc, but it's actually a turtle, I guess. After you summon a minion, trigger its Death Rattle effect. Welcome, Spirit Singer Umbra, to the team of Brand Bronzebeard and Fandral Staghelm, because effectively this is like a Brand and this is like a Fandral. You get an extra effect on top of something that you would normally get. And with Death Rattle, yeah, this can get pretty insane, especially in the Priest Death Rattle deck, right? Unfortunately, Sylvanas is rotating out to the Hall of Fame, so she's dead, so you can't actually play Spirit Singer Umbra and Sylvanas. But the fact remains that there are a lot of Death Rattle minis that you want to play. So Spirit Singer Umbra gets a 5 stars in my book. The Vorax is a 4 mana 3/3 plant creature that after you cast a spell on this minion, you summon a 1/1 plant and cast another copy on it. Might see play in the Paladin buff deck where you just want to cast as many buffs as possible. It also doubles up, right? If you cast the Vorax and you actually buff it with Blessing of Kings, it triggers as 2 procs on your quest that requires you to buff your minions, right? Which is really cool. So yeah, Vorax might see play there. I'm pretty sure it's not going to see play anywhere else though. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that this is a 2-star card, because at the end of the day, you don't even need to play Vorax with the Paladin buff deck. Say hello to Elise, the Trailblazer. It is she's a 5 mana 5/5 with Battlecry. Shuffle a sealed Ungoro pack into your deck, and the Ungoro pack is a 2 mana spell card that adds 5 Journey to Ungoro cards into your hand. Now, this is actually a rigged pack. Okay, it's not a normal Ungoro pack that you're gonna open. Developers confirm that you're gonna get at minimum 1 epic. And the average legendaries you're going to get from this pack is 1. So sometimes you can get 2 legendaries, sometimes you can get no legendaries. But holy jeez, you're getting 5 cards. 2 mana draw 5 is just a game ender. This is the new Elise because the old Elise is rotating out. This is a game winner in control matchups. And unfortunately, if you're playing the mirror match and you both have Elises, then you pray to God that your Ungoro pack is better than your opponent's Ungoro pack. This is an obvious 5-star because Elise can actually just win the game by herself if you get to stabilize the board. Hemet Jungle Hunter is the new Hemet Nestingwary. With 6 mana 6/6, you get to destroy all cards in your deck that cost 3 or less. Now, this is one of the weirder cards. It is a very interesting mechanic that effectively makes all your cards a good draw, but you don't really know what cards, what deck you want to put this in, right? I mean, partly why control decks are really good is because they can play a big minion and a removal spell for like sap. They can play Shadow of Death along with the 7-drop, right? Destroy all cards in your deck that cost 3 or less seems a little bit awkward. I mean, my guess is that this card will see play in some weird Barnes deck so that you can Barnes out something that you specifically want because you killed all the cards in your deck that cost very, very little. But outside of that, I don't really see that this is going to be too good. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a 1-star. Finally, we got Ozrook. It's a 9 mana 5/5 with taunt. Battlecry, it gains +5 health for each elemental you play this turn. Last turn, I mean. Very easy to trigger, honestly, because there's so many elementals that you can do it, and it's not unreasonable to say that this is going to be a 9 mana 5/15. But if you play a control deck anyways, what the hell is a 9 mana 5/15 taunt gonna make you gonna do for you anyways, right? It's just a big dirty creature that is susceptible to removal and silence and all those stuff, and you actually have to work to make this happen. Do note that this is kind of it's played, so it doesn't really work with Dr. 7, the elemental. It only counts as 1. So yeah, I don't think a big dirty creature is exactly what you want to look for in these elemental decks. Alright, and finally we are done with the Constructed Compendium. Before we end the video, I'm gonna go ahead and list the tier list of the classes that I think are going to be the best in GORO set. So there are 4 tiers. There's tier 1, which are the best decks that are gonna define the meta. I'm gonna be placing the Hunter 1-drop deck in tier 1. I'm gonna be placing the Time Warp Mage as tier 1, and I'm also going to be placing Mid-Range Shaman as tier 1, whether they play Jades, whether they play the new Elementals. I think these 3 classes are going to be tier 1. Onwards, we have the tier 1.5, which are the tiers that are good, but not quite as broken as the ones we have right now. So tier 1.5 classes would be something like Druid, the Jade Druid deck. You know, we also have Zoolock. We also have Handlock. You know, these are the classes that we think are actually pretty good. Pirate Warrior falls under tier 1.5 as well because of there are just so many good control tools that are coming. Although, yeah, Control Warrior is still going to be pretty insane. Next up, we have tier 2. Tier 2 are the decks that are not really as powerful as the tier 1 and tier 1.5 decks, obviously. You might want to play it as a flavor kind of thing, so you are more, you think you are more likely to play this deck because it's your style, and it's because it's a good metagame choice or something like that. So tier 2 decks would be the rogue decks. You know, all sorts of rogue decks fall under tier 2. We have the priest decks, so the Miracle Priest. We have just Control Priest, Dragon Priest, all falls under tier 2. And Temple Mage would fall under tier 2 as well. And finally, of course, everything else that we did not mention falls under tier 3. I actually do not know what Paladins are going to do with their new stuff. I mean, sure, Kaleidosaur is going to be a good thing, but it's pretty all in, and I think some other decks going to, you know, do more dirty stuff than that. So Paladin would be tier 3, and then you know, all the other decks that are the weird ones, you know, like, you know, the super ramp Druid decks with pilfered powers and your living manas or something like that crazy, or you know, those cards won't be that good. So there you go. That oh yeah, and Murloc Shaman would be tier 3 as well. All right, that is the Constructed Compendium, guys. Good luck. In the new set. Of course, I'll be making some awesome videos. I am also, here we go, announcing a new series. It is the Amaz Mammoth decks. Oh yeah, so every week, you know, in a Saturday or Sunday, we're gonna pretty much think about this. I'm gonna be making a deck tech video on one of these archetypes. So for example, the first week would be you know, the 1-drop hunters. I'm gonna explain what cards you want to put in there, what the game plan is, the matchups and everything. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have one every week, and you guys are going to love the series, hopefully. And yeah, there's also another series coming up, but hey, this one is for sure. The other series might happen, might not happen. Stay tuned for more news. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Once again, if you are confused on how to evaluate the constructed cards on GORO and what deck to play, well, you just watched the video. So now you are smart, you are clever. So go ahead out there and beat everybody in the GORO expansion. Thank you for watching this YouTube video. We'll see you in the journey to GORO.